All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. All right, share this out, share this out, share this out. It's Friday night. Friday night, the Law of One. Welcome, 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 everybody. I see some people already in the audience there. Denise, welcome. I said hi to Denise already. She was saying hi on YouTube earlier. Penny is there. Penny, welcome. Brooke is there. Brooke, welcome. Who else is there? Reese is there. Welcome. Denise, welcome. Who else is there? I already said Denise. Now I said Denise twice, 3 times now. All right, guys, share this out, share this out, share this out. It's Friday night, the Law of One. I backed up a few here. Let me pull this banner down, this overlay down here, right? Let's do that, get that out of the way. Pull myself up into full screen here until we go to the Law of One. All right, so hope you guys are doing okay. Hope you can hear me okay. Didn't have time to test anything, right? Didn't have time to test anything to make sure that it was working properly. It looks like my camera's a little weird on the latency here. Not quite sure what's going on with that. But it is doing a little bizarre there. Hold on, I got to change the channel on the television to something else for my mother to watch. I didn't have time to do that. I was talking to Brooke before I came live and had to go, I got to go live. So I was talking to her while that was happening. Okay, so Law of One, right? My camera, I didn't even check my camera. It's off. You can see the boxes that are over here. How about I turn my camera a little bit this way so we don't look at all the boxes, right? Today's Good Friday. For those of you who are paying attention, if you're in Australia, it's already Saturday, so it's already past that. So about 24 hours ago, a little bit less than 24 hours ago, would have been the actual time. A little bit more than 24 hours ago now, somewhere close to that, would have been the actual time that Jesus was crucified, that he died yesterday. So that would have been Thursday for the people in the United States, Friday for those of you in Australia, because you're closer to the Middle East timeline, you're past it. So because you're right on the prime meridian there. So it was a little bit like that because it was in the afternoon, going into the evening, the time there in Calvary, or Golgotha, the mountain that he was crucified on there, Jerusalem. So yeah, it was afternoon, evening there, afternoon, evening time there. So it would have been evening if you're in Australia. It would have been evening there when it happened, or earlier for you when it actually happened. No, it wasn't actually evening. It wasn't noon. Some people say it was noon, but it was close to that. So it would have been evening Australia time. And then Thursday evening America time as well when it happened. So that way you get the 2.5 days, 2.5 days. So Sunday is Easter. So if it happened actually on Friday, that's only 2 days. Saturday, Sunday is only 2 days away. It's only 48 hours. It had to be more than 48 hours because it was almost 72 hours. It was 2.5 days. So it had to have happened earlier in the day than people think that it happened, right? So it would have actually been your guys' Thursday, no, your guys' Friday, but early in the day for it to be Sunday in the afternoon, evening. Okay, so I had that backwards. So anyways, and it's Passover at the same time, and that doesn't always coincide with Easter, but every now and then it actually coincides at the same time, ends up being the same time. This happens to be one of those years when it does that. So I just thought I would mention that as a Christian minister. I thought I would mention that to you guys out there around the world if you are in fact Christian, because almost 3 billion people on this planet consider themselves Christian. That's quite a bit of the amount of population of the people when you consider we have just about 8 billion people now. 3 billion that's the largest religion on the face of the earth. A lot of people try to tell you that it's different, but nobody can muster those kind of numbers. Okay, so. If you guys are, Cassie, welcome. I didn't see you there. Peter, welcome. I wasn't looking at the chat until just now, and I started looking at the chat, right? So welcome, guys. Share this out. Friday, the Law of One. So I backed up. We're on session, I think, 86. Let me take a look here. Session 89, pardon me. Session 89. I backed up to question 32, 33, even though we were on like question 39, just because we were talking about, or Ra was talking to Dawn was talking to Ra about the two individuals from Ra's timeline when they were in third dimension on their planet or on Venus, as a matter of fact, when the scenario that happened from the creation of the veiling and evil, self-serving people, that scenario that happened a long time ago when that whole entire thing was created, replayed itself as an echo on Venus when Ra was there, where you had a male and a female who were in fact trying to stimulate the evil people, or stimulate people who were self-serving into more love towards the Creator, inspire them in some way to expand their consciousness to the Creator. And they reenacted the same masculine or male and a female counterpart, became self-serving, and then redid the entire scenario to recreate the same thing there on that planet at that time. And that's what we're talking about now in this session. So I backed up a little bit to move into that again and then go forward from there, instead of, because where we were at was in the middle of that discussion. So this is the beginning of it. I still could have gone back another couple of questions to get to the very beginning of it, but that's why I'm giving you the premise. Now I'm catching you up to date so that when he starts talking about those wanderers and those two people, that we didn't have to go to the whole beginning and start over there with that. So I thought I would do that, and then we can get involved in that. So here in this solar system, to be clear, here in this solar system on the planet Venus, when the planet Venus had third dimensional beings on it, like Earth currently does, like Terra currently does, when it was in that phase of its development, before it shifted out of that development, which it has done now, and it cannot support third or fourth density life forms. Earth is currently shifting out of the density of being able to support third dimensional life forms. But because we're here and we haven't left and we're not leaving, we're still here. Because of that, we're keeping that going, and the planet's getting confused with that because the planet is supporting fourth dimensional life forms. So it's supposed to be first, second, fourth, and eighth on this planet here. So we can't see the fourth and we can't see the eighth because they're out of phase with us. And what's happening here, and this is why I wanted to back up to here to go forward, what's happening here is that we're changing the genetic code, we're upgrading the timelines. And I wanted to mention that because I looked something up today, and I'll get to that in a second. So the timeline for the human genome is changing to move the entire species that can move into 4D without having to have a planet-killing event to have a harvest. So we're actually doing something that's ultra rare in the universe. It's only happened in the Milky Way galaxy one other time, by the way, until this event that we're doing here this time. So we're, instead of having some sort of catastrophe, a world war or a volcano or a meteor that blows us all in smithereens or something like that annihilates the population, we're upgrading the DNA and we're shifting the timeline, and it's just going to happen instantaneously. And most of the people here are not even going to be aware that it even happened. It's just going to change the face of the earth. And then we're going to have a utopian society begin where all of this strife that we have is going to just cease. It's going to go away. And we're going to move into a more prosperous reality that when we literally just shift the timelines. Okay. So this is something that is not normal, but it's something that the Creator has allowed, because the Creator kind of likes this new idea of not having to do all of that damage. And because if we can shift people without trauma that's unnecessary, then that's fine in the eyes of the Creator, because we thought of it up. So we're doing that here on this earth. So it's a really, really spectacular event that is occurring here. And that's what's going to be the norm. We're hoping in the future that if the Creator likes it enough, that's going to be a thing that's going to reoccur more often. And then the Creator will decide whether it works better or the other way, or just leave them concurrent. That's not up to us at this level. Okay. So, I don't know if you guys are aware I haven't talked about this much on air. I might have talked about it in the last couple of weeks, but I don't think I have. That there was a shift in the timeline. I've talked about it privately behind the scenes, not on air. There was a shift in the timeline that was pretty big, but I didn't hear of any major changes, nor did I see any major changes. So I hadn't said anything to anybody about it. And because today is Good Friday, I've been talking about the crucifixion and resurrection. And I've been talking about in the past the crucifixion and the resurrection as to when the 2,000-year anniversary of Jesus's death and resurrection was. Everyone assumes that it's going to be the year in 33 because he was 33 years of age when he was crucified, but he wasn't born on the year 1. And so everybody thinks that he was, right? So, however, in the past, it's been a different year in the BC range, or for those of you that are not, in fact, Christian, BCE, before Common Era. And we're now in AD, or we're in Common Era. So if you're Christian, it goes BC and then AD. BC being before Christ and AD being Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord. If you're a secularist or a non-Christian, it's before Common Era and Common Era. Okay, so in January of this year, I was sitting in this room, or that room in there, with my brother, who is he's now in school to be a theologian. He's in a theological college and he's getting his minister license and his theological license, and his son. And we were looking in the Smith's Bible Dictionary at exactly what the timeline was of Jesus's birth according to that dictionary. And that dictionary is the most prominent worldwide dictionary of the Bible that was put together by Smith, and everyone uses it, and everybody in every theological college has a copy of it, and they quote out of it. So it's the most comprehensive and most detailed history and literally dictionary of the Bible on the planet currently. So they go by that as the doctrine, like the Pirate Codex. And and we looked in January 5th, January 6th this year. We looked, and in the date in there, the date has changed in there. It did calculate to 33 years. It was BC that he was born, and 33 years later was the year 2027. And I haven't checked it until then, but because today I was going to be talking about it here, on here, I pulled up the dictionary and I opened it up and I read it. And now it says that Jesus was born on the year 5 BC. So 5 BC, 33 years later, is no longer the year 2027. It is now the year 2028. Okay, so that changed since January, and the only event and that's not me remembering it wrong. It literally has changed. And if you go back, you'll find that in me talking about it. So it changed, but in my mind, I also have the memory of it being 4 BC. I was talking to Brooke about this before I came on the air. Joanne, welcome. That it's 4 BC, but right now it's 5 BC. So if it turns to 4 BC, it's going to shift to 2029. And then Brooke said to me while I was telling her about it just prior to coming on the air with this, she said, I remember us talking about this a month ago. And I said to you, I thought that it was in the year 2033. And my response to her was, no, that was the year how old he was when he died. But he was born in BC. And she, at that point, said, but I thought that he was born on the year 1. And I said, that's a misconception that everybody thinks. But when you look it up, it's not that date. But I thought it was as well. So we left it at that. And she said, that's strange because I thought that. So again, today, she said, I'm telling you that I still remember. I have the memory that it is the year 2033. That's the 2,000-year anniversary. I said, I do too. And it seems to be shifting to that because it was further back. And now with the timeline changes that are occurring, that seems to be changing in the timeline. And it seems to be moving that more towards that correct date. And by calculating it in my brain, as the planet is shifting back to its 0 point at the same rate of speed that it's shifting back to 0 point, and the timelines are shifting, that we're fixing and we're changing the timelines, it keeps moving Jesus's date of birth closer to the year 1. If that happens and it's the year 1 BC or AD, then 33 years later is going to be 2032, 2033. Okay. If it continues to go exactly the way it seems to be going, by the time we get to the year 2033, it will coincide, and it'll be the 2,000-year anniversary of Jesus's death and resurrection, the crucifixion and the resurrection on 2033. And there's a lot of people out there who say, I believe that it's supposed to be 2033. When did it change? And I don't believe that that's definitive that that's right. So there's also other discrepancies, but I'm not going to get involved in all of that right now. There's discrepancies about the Jesus's birthday being in December, and I was just reading that in there as well. And because they were saying that it was a long night that he was born on, and they're suggesting that that's the solstice, and they keep saying December 25th, but the solstice does not occur on December 25th. The solstice always occurs between 2021 and 2023. It doesn't occur on December 25th. Did it 2,000 years ago? It's possible. So I haven't looked at that. That's why I didn't bring it up, but now I'm bringing it up to explain it. But I'm looking at that. However, there's also a solstice that happens at the same time, because what they're saying there is that's the longest, the shortest day. Well, it's not the shortest day of the year in Jerusalem. Jerusalem's not in the northern hemisphere. It's closer to the southern hemisphere. And I don't know exactly what parallel it's on, but I don't believe that it's in the northern hemisphere. And it's in the southern part of the northern hemisphere if it is. So it's not going to be as drastic. And most of the ideology comes out of Rome or above with the Europeans. So for the Europeans, it would be darker on that day, but it's because it is the solstice, the winter solstice. So it would be darkest on that day, but that's not what it said in the Bible. So that's shifted as well. And that's why I haven't gotten involved in all that, because I haven't researched all of that thoroughly to go backwards in time and see what it was there in Jerusalem at the time to find that out, because I don't believe that Jesus was even born in December. And I think they just moved it to that because it doesn't logically work with even the canon from the church itself. Right. So I know you guys came here to listen to the Law of One, not me talking about the Jesus character and when and where he was born and any of that stuff. However, it does play into what's going on, because when the Orion Crusaders got here, they changed the timeline. Okay. And during that civil war that happened between the Atlanteans, that's when they messed up the timelines here even worse, when they flipped the Earth over on its axis and flipped it back upright, and that's why we're crooked now. So in fixing the Earth and making it go back up to 0 point, being upright, being 0 point again, it's shifting the timeline. When we fix that, it's changing the past. We're aware of that. Wanderers are aware of that. But all the conspiracy theorists out there in the world think it's CERN, and they think it's the evil people doing it. And the evil people are scared to death. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what's causing it. They don't know who's doing it. And when people like me say it, they're like, yeah, no, they don't have that ability. They're just, because there is no God. And what they're saying that they're out of body and they're changing things. Yeah, right. They're making stuff up. So they don't believe any of this that can go on, because they're secularists. They live in the flesh, and this is all they know. So they can't look at anything spiritual. Okay, so it looks like that's going to continue to shift with the timelines, as the timelines are shifting, as we are writing them and rewriting the timeline back to where it should be. It looks like that if it keeps going with the same progression that it has been since I've been studying it when I was in this lifetime, it is shifting that timeline to where Jesus is no longer born as far back in the BC category of years, and he's moving more towards the AD or Common Era. So if he's born at 1 BC or 1 AD, it will determine whether it's a masculine or feminine year, 2022 or 2020 or 2032 or 2033. And ideally, it should be 2033 because that's what a lot of people have as the original memory of when Jesus was born. I do as well. Okay. And I thought maybe I just misunderstood that, and it should have been something different, but it's now shifting, and it has been consistently shifting back that way as the planet is righting itself, as the timelines are shifting. And then having a timeline shift a couple of months ago, I didn't notice anything big that had changed. That's not always the case. However, spelling of words did change, and we use a C and a K now, where we only used two Ks before, and most of you don't have that memory. Some of you do. I remember talking to a couple of people when I was like, didn't we have KK, no CK? And before that we had CC, and so it shifted because the English language comes from Futhark, and the Vikings didn't have a K, they had a C. And it was later on that there was a hard line added behind the C to change from the soft C of, like, say, Celtic to the hard C, or what we call the K, so the word is Celtic. So that was something that happened around the 1200s on this earth, where we added a line to the back of that word or that letter to give it a hard cell K sound instead of a S sound, because there was no letter, and it became what we now call a K, with the line there. With it used to be a shape like this, where it was like that, and then a K, and then we'd rounded it in uppercase, lowercase. So then it shifted, though, because it was to make the hard K, it was two C's to make the hard K. Then it shifted to a K, and then it was CK, or then it was KK, and then it went to CK. So it's weird that it changed like that, but most of you don't have that memory anyways. So that changed this year as well, the spelling of words. And there's other words that use an X now, and there was no X until the Greeks and the with the eidetic alphabet, and then X was put into that alphabet, and it was used partly for one of the K sounds, and now it's used as a Z sound. That changed this year as well. Okay, most of you don't have that memory, so it doesn't matter if I'm saying this to you and you're like, yeah, okay, he's just making things up now. But there are some of you out there who know what I'm talking about, because you also have the same exact memories that I do. And I've talked to a few of you that are out there. Okay, so let's get back to what we're talking about here. So back Venus, when Venus was third dimensional planet, and Ra is now explaining to Dawn, the questioner, that there was an echo from the original scenario that happened to create the dichotomy between good and evil, creating evil altogether at that time. And now he's learning about, Dawn that is learning from Ra that echoed and played out on Venus, and Ra is explaining about that. So I'm going to go ahead and press play. Let me take myself out of full screen and put the law of one up in full screen, and we will go ahead and I'll press play so you guys can give me a sound check and let me know if you guys can hear it okay. And I'll check the sound here, and then we'll start. So we're on session 89, and I believe we're going to be on it's either 32, question 32 or question 33. So let me go ahead and start here, and you guys let me know if you can hear it okay.
9.33. Questioner: what was the origin of the two entities of which you speak? Answer: I am Ra. These entities were wanderers from early positive fifth density. Question 89.34. Questioner: and though they had already evolved through a positive fourth density, they, shall we say, switched polarity in the reincarnating in third density. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Question 89.35. Questioner: what was the catalyst for their change? Answer: I am Ra. In our peoples there was what may be considered, from the viewpoint of wisdom, an overabundance of love. These entities looked at those still in darkness and saw that those of a neutral or somewhat negative viewpoint found such harmony, shall we say, sickening. The wanderers felt that a more wisdom-oriented way of seeking love could be more appealing to those in darkness. First one entity began its work. Quickly the second found the first. These entities had agreed to serve together, and so they did, glorifying the one creator, but not as they intended. About them were soon gathered those who found it easy to believe that the series of specific knowledges and wisdoms would advance one towards the creator. The end of this was the graduation into fourth density negative of the wanderers, which had much power of personality, and some small deepening of the negatively polarized element of those not polarizing positively. There was no negative harvest as such. Question 89.36. Questioner, what was the reason for the wandering of these two wanderers, and were they male and female?
See, so here's where you're actually finding that out, because Don's asking the question. So me, giving you the premise of what's going on. If you were here last week, you know what we're talking about. Chandra, welcome. Shelly, welcome. Did I miss anybody that came in? If you come in, you don't say hi in the chat. I just see numbers. I don't know who else here. So if you come into the show and you're on the MP4 broadcast somewhere around the world, say hello in the chat so I know you're here. And if you're listening on the MP3 broadcast, you can't say anything in the chat. And if you guys do wish to come on to say something on the live in a chat, you can either go to YouTube under my name, Leonard O'Neill, on YouTube, or Google Orion Rising on YouTube, and then find the episodes that are on there. Watch it on YouTube, or watch it on Facebook, or watch it on Instagram, because I go live on those three platforms to do the show on every Friday night here on the West Coast of the United States of America at 3 p.m. California time, Western standard time. I think we're in standard time now. No, I think we're in daylight savings time. Yeah. So we're in daylight savings time. Okay. So now you're actually starting to find out. So everything that I gave you the premise for was already giving you the information of what's going on. So now he's asking, were the two wanderers who did this male and female? And then you're going to find out yes. And so it is an echo. It's not identical 100% to the original veiling and that process, but it is echoing the same process of a masculine and feminine, a man and a woman coming through, souls wanderers coming through as a man and a woman, and doing the same scenario to inspire people to on Venus be evil, but doing it for a good purpose. So it's kind of akin to, if you ever read Lord of the Rings or watched the first movie, it's akin to, or any of the movies, it's akin to the using the One Ring for what you think is a good purpose. Pardon me. For a good purpose, and then the ring itself, that power seduces you, and you end up doing more harm than good. The same thing happened here on Venus, where they were trying to use that negative idea of that creative idea of inserting or introducing the veiling and evil to the population, which backfired, and it did more harm than good on Venus. But everything ultimately serves the all anyways. So everything ultimately serves as a positive. And that's a little much for people to understand down here in third dimensional ideology, because it's a little hard to fathom down here that there is no right and wrong. There is just experience, and everything serves the all. That's a 5D concept and realization. And most people in 3D would get angry at me for even saying this. And they do probably quite a bit whenever I say there is no right and wrong. There is just experience, because then they get mad at me because I'm, like, well, you're saying rape is okay. And no, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that it serves the all. There's nothing about that I said that it was okay to do anything that's evil. But that's people in their judgment of their ego saying that's believing that that's what I was inferring when I'm not inferring that. Okay, so let's continue here.
Answer: I am Ra. All wanderers come to be of assistance in serving the Creator, each in its own way. The wanderers of which we have been speaking were indeed incarnated male and female, as this is by far the most efficient system of partnership. Question 89.37. Questioner: as a wild guess, one of these entities wouldn't be the one who has been our companion here for some time, would it? Answer: I am Ra. No. Question 89.38.
Turkey Raw.
Questioner, then from what you say I am guessing that these wanderers returned or wandered to Ra's third density possibly to seek greater wisdom in what they saw as an overabundance of compassion in the Ra culture. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect in the sense that before incarnation it was the desire of these wanderers only to aid in service to others. The query has correctness when seen from the viewpoint of the wanderers within that incarnation. Question 89.39. Questioner, I just can't understand why they would think that a planet that was doing as well as the population of Venus was doing, as far as I can tell, would need wanderers in order to help with the harvest. Was this at an early point in Ra's third density? Answer, I am Ra. It was in the second cycle of 25,000 years. We had a harvest to 6 out of 30, to speak roughly, of millions of mind, body, spirit complexes, less than 20%. Wanderers are always drawn to whatever percentage has not yet polarized, and come when there is a call. There was a call from those which were not positively polarized as such, but which sought to be positively polarized and sought wisdom, feeling the compassion of other selves upon Venus as complacent or pitying towards other selves. Question 89.40. Questioner, what was the attitude of these two entities after they graduated into fourth density negative and, the veil being removed, realized that they had switched polarities? Answer, I am Ra. They were disconcerted. Question 89.41. Questioner, then did they continue striving to polarize negatively for a fifth density harvest in the negative sense, or did they do something else? Answer, I am Ra. They worked with the fourth density negative for some period until, within this framework, the previously learned patterns of the self had been recaptured and the polarity was, with great effort, reversed. There was a great deal of fourth density positive work then to be retraced. Question 89.42. Questioner.
See, so the same thing happened to them that happened to the original two, who also did the falling, as it were. Did the coming back to be evil or self-serving, and then teaching people to rape, pillage, murder, and do all those sort of things, including controlling people and all of that, harming people and torturing people and controlling people and enslaving people and all those things. They too graduated to the fourth density on the evil side, and then were confused that happened to them. So the ramifications, weirdly, that the creator set down because somebody had to move in motion to the next level the first time to transition from being in third dimension to fourth dimension on the in service to self side. They were unaware and didn't ask questions. Both the original two that volunteered to do that evil, and then these two on Venus also made the same mistake and didn't realize that, and so they graduated to the next level in the fourth density on the evil side, and then were confused that happened to them, and had to then go through the same process to then do exactly what you're supposed to do in repent your ways, to then start ascending again from the fourth density on the side of being in service to others. And you can't fool the universe. You can fool humans, but you can't fool the universe when you do that. So you can't trick the universe and go, I'm going to pretend I'm good and go all the way back and take over heaven. You can't do that. The universe sees the difference, and you just can't do that. It just doesn't work. So, but however, it is mirroring at this point, albeit an echo because it's not the exact event, but it is mirroring and echoing that event, and the people didn't expect that would happen. So it's strange, right? Hi, Fiona. Fiona just popped in and said hello. Okay, so let's continue here.
How is Ra aware of this information? By what means does Ra know the precise orientation of these two entities in fourth density negative, etc.? Answer, I am Ra. These entities joined Ra in fourth density positive for a portion of the cycle which we experienced. Question 89.43. Questioner, I assume, then, that they came in late. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. Yes. question 89.44. Questioner, I didn't mean to get so far off the track of my original direction, but I think that some of these excursions are enlightening and will help in understanding the basic mechanisms that we are so interested in evolution. Ra stated that archetypes are helpful when used in a controlled way. Would you give me an example of what you mean by using an archetype in a controlled way? Answer, I am Ra. We speak with some regret in stating that this shall be our last query of length. There is substantial energy left, but this instrument has distortions that rapidly approach the limit of our ability to maintain secure contact. The controlled use of the archetypes is that which is done within the self for the polarization of the self and to the benefit of the self, if negatively polarized, or others, if positively polarized, upon the most subtle of levels. Keep in mind that at all times that the archetypical mind is a portion of the deep mind and informs thought processes. When the archetype is translated without regard for magical propriety into the manifested daily actions of an individual, the greatest distortions may take place and great infringement upon the free will of others is possible. This is more nearly acceptable to one negatively polarized. However, the more carefully polarized of negative mind, body, spirit complexes will also prefer to work with a finely tuned instrument. May we ask if there are any brief queries before we leave this working?
Right. So you have to realize that there's an example of the thinking mind of the person who is in service to self, and the difference between that and the person who's in service to others, where a person who in service to others would not infringe or even suggest infringing on somebody's free will. And yet the people that are self-serving will push to that limit and force that if they can. And if they can't, they'll back away from it, and they can't. So they'll back just away from it, but they'll get as close as they possibly can to the infringement of free will, to usurp free will every single time, and including in their verbiage and the way they speak about that concept. And that's one of the things that I made as the 2 weeks ago now, or a week, 2 Wednesdays ago now, I made that the topic of the discussion for you to see that and understand that or understand that about people that are self-serving, because it's not what they say, it's how they say it. Sometimes it is what they say, but also other times it's what they don't say, and other times it is how they say things. There is a consistency to the way they speak that is directly related to their IQ, and that will show you who they are, because they cannot and will not hide when it comes to certain things, because they cannot. So because of what they truly believe and their arrogance, even when they're trying to pretend, there are certain things that they will say that you can trip them up to get them to say, that will allow you to see who they truly are, and their true colors comes out. You just have to know what to look for and how to see it when they're talking, because people who are in service to others do not even get near those subjects, because it would never occur to them to think in that way, because they're in service to others. So they don't even get near to the conversations and the verbiage of self-serving. And they don't even understand self-serving. They don't even understand, they don't fathom the concept of self-service. And that's where the biggest problem with people is on this planet, is that they don't understand that concept of self-serving, right? My ex-wife, who was molested when she was a child, said, "Why did he do that?" And they said, "There's only one reason why. And it's actually should be obvious to you. He did it because he could, because he got off on it. He could. There was no motivational factor of, I want to do this to this girl because, other than my pleasure. And that's why he did it. Other than that, I want to do this because it would pleasure me if I did it. I like doing it, and I can get away with it." And people don't realize it is that simple and cut and dry to those people. They do those things because they can and because they like doing it, because it turns them on. So it's sexually motivated, and they can get away with it. They know they can because they've done that before. Even when they do it for the first time, they do it because of that kind of stuff. They realize it. So the first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. If you're aware of a thing, then you can control a thing. Or if you're aware of a thing, you can know a thing, right? Okay, so let's continue here.
Question 89.45. Questioner, I will just make the statement that I perceive that a negative polarity harvest is possible with less negativity in the environment like Ra's environment than in the environment such as we have at present, and ask if that is correct. And then, is there anything that we can do to improve the contact or the comfort of the instrument? Answer, I am Ra. Firstly, the requirements of harvest are set. It is, however, easier to serve the self completely or nearly so if there is little resistance. In the matter of the nurturing of the instrument, we suggest further manipulation of the dorsal side and appendages of this instrument and the whirling of the waters, if possible. The alignments are conscientious. We ask for your vigilance in alignments and preparations. All is well, my friends. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, so it'll switch over to the next session on its own. So that was session 89 of the Law of One. That took place on June 9th, 1982. So we will go to the next session here in a second. And there'll be a commercial that we'll have to get through, I'm sure. They usually are all monetized.
I am Ra. I greet you in the love.
Okay, so this is session 90, part 1, June 19th, 1982. The Law of One.
And in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 90.1. Questioner, could you first please give me the condition of the instrument? Answer.
Right. So Penny said, not knowing what self-service is growing up makes it difficult. That is the, if you're not exposed to it, you're lucky, right? Right, Penny. If you're not exposed to it, you're lucky. On this planet, 14% of the population is in service to self. So that means that if there's 10 people in a room, 14 of them, or if there's 100 people in the room, 14 of them are going to be evil. If there's 10 people in the room, you're going to have, what does that equal out to? 2.1. So 2 of them, if you have 10 people in a room, approximately 2 of those 10, is that 14%? Whatever the 14% is, could be 3 is 30%. So just whatever. It's a smaller number with 10, right? So that's the truth of it. So you could look at and say, 1 in 10, or, one is evil and the other one is kind of evil. So it's not always definite that you're going to have someone in one of your family members. But if there's more than 10 people in your family, one of them, there's a possibility that one of them is going to be self-serving. And self-service usually runs in families. They come through that way weirdly. Not everyone, though, in the family does. There's always a dynamic that shifts back and forth. So if you don't know about it, you don't learn about it. If you don't learn about it, you don't know about it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. However, it is still hard for, even being exposed to it, it is hard for people who are in service to others to grasp the concepts of the thought processes of the people who are in service to self. Even when drastic things happen to them, they don't understand the motivation. And so they have a hard time understanding or understanding why somebody would do something like that to other people. Because they don't fathom, they don't in any way contemplate the thought process that would put them in a place to try and justify what that person did, because they don't think like that person. Okay. So it's not a bad thing. It's a natural thing. Some of us, our job is to know them. That's why, like Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, to know thy enemy is to know thyself, meaning you're the only one that knows you really, really well. And you have to know your enemy as well as you know yourself to defeat that enemy. The only way that you can defeat your enemy is to think like that enemy, right? So you have to anticipate in warfare what that enemy of yours is going to do. So you have to be able to think like them and anticipate their movements, actions, and thought processes to do the different things to try and attack you or take you out or win a battle or whatever against you. And now there I'm referring to mostly warfare, but it works in everything, including if you're playing a chess game with somebody, checkers game with somebody, anything that's a strategy in life itself is a cat and mouse game. So if you wanted, so any opponent to defeat them, you need to know how they think. Doesn't matter what you're playing, checkers, chess, doesn't matter what you're playing. You have to anticipate the movements of the person. And you learn that by those games that are strategy games. You learn that and how to think like someone and outthink them. So you have to do the same thing if you want to survive on this planet, or you have to somehow keep all of those people away from you. And it's not always easy to do, right? Because you can't see them. So if you can't identify them, hence the term that I use that Frank Herbert wrote in the Dune sagas, especially in the first book. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. You can't avoid a trap if you don't know what's there. So you have to learn about that. So sorry, I pumped on Cassie's name and popped her up there and then took her down, but didn't read what she was saying. So yeah, it's hard to know what the motivation is behind self-serving people for sure. Why they do those things that they do or how they think. It is hard unless you study them, right? So you have to kind of be a person that follows and studies them to figure them out, figure out their thinking. So not everybody's capable of doing that without getting caught up in that. There's profilers in most agencies like the Interpol and Scotland Yard and the FBI here in the United States. There are people that's their job in all over the world, that they profile other humans. Those people have a clearer insight because they have to profile those people and the way they think. So once you start doing that, it becomes an easier thing to do because it's like riding a bike or anything else. Once you become more comfortable with something, you get better at it, right? Right. So you have to actually look at those factors in everything. But some of you just don't need to do that. And if you don't need to do it, then I say everybody probably should. If you're in service to others, you should, just to protect yourself and be able to see what people are up to. Right. Fiona said 100%. So true. 100%. I have some do this to me, but I've seen through now. I'm awakening, but to this kind of things in life. Yeah, you when they do things to you, you start seeing that, right? And so when you look at that, right, and Joanne said your explanation, you're explaining the relationship with me and my sister. It makes sense. I was experienced when I left home, right? So see that when you, and so when you look at that and you're comparing that explanation to your relationship between yourself and your sister, and you see that Denise as well with herself and her sister may not be evil, but she's definitely living in the flesh and possibly a little self-serving because she kind of talks like that. And so Denise can probably relate as well if she looks at her sister and says, her sister always says negative things to her and about her. Right. All the time. So we know somebody that's like that in our families, but not everybody has that in their families. But in life, those things happen too. If you're in a workplace and you're online anywhere like Facebook or any, I'm not just taking shots at Facebook. I'm just using that for an example because I'm broadcasting on Facebook. Any social platform, when you're on there and you're talking to other humans, you're going to find people that are self-serving that are going to pop up, right? Cassie said, I've learned more about them through growing up and growing in my spiritual journey, being more aware for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. As you are spiritually becoming more aware and you're moving into that to that spirit body in your ascension, then you start identifying with whatever side you've chosen. Because that's the only way that you move out of the physical plane, is to choose one of those, either in service to self or in service to others. And then you start moving up towards the fourth density on either in service to self or in service to others. And then it becomes a little bit more apparent, the difference between, and it's faster for those in service to self because they consider you prey and they consider you weak. So it's faster for them, the stark differences between self-serving people and service to others people. And then they're hiding from you to take advantage of you like a predator. So they're a wolf in sheep's clothing, and you just see the sheep because you don't realize there are wolves. And then when you start going, well, there's wolves out there, how do I identify them? At that point, you're still not realizing there's a wolf. You're just realizing there's a predator and you don't know what it is that you're looking for. So you're still seeing the sheep. It's only through time that you learn that you're actually looking for a wolf who's dressed up like a sheep. And that's what you'll start looking for when that's the first step in avoiding a trap, is knowing of its existence. So once you realize that some of the sheep might be wolves pretending to be sheep, you then start looking at all sheep that's a little bit different. And you start noticing the differences to where 99% or 86% of all the sheep look the same like sheep. And then there's that 14% that has something different about them. And when you look real hard, you see there's a wolf in there. Do you see? So it takes time. Well, Cassie said, I'm still learning though. Well, we are all still learning. Anyone who says they're not is lying to themselves at this point and listening to their ego, because at this level, we are all still learning, and we're going to be learning until we become the creator. And like I've said several times, many times, this entire scenario is happening in the universe because the creator themselves has decided that they can still learn. Otherwise, there would be no need for this, because the creator would have all knowledge of everything ultimately, and there would be no reason to reenact any of it. Okay, so the very fact that we have this scenario that's happening and different levels of education and ascension suggests that the creator is aware that the creator itself, their selves, whatever vernacular you need to choose to use here, to describe the all souls, combined as a spirit, mind, spirit, body totality, complex totality, that the creator themselves realizes that they have room for improvement and are seeking it, actively seeking it. That was the function of creating this entire place and the scenario that is playing out, that you and I in our avatars are currently playing out while listening to me talk about the law of one. Okay. So you have to look at that, right? So Shelley says the book Concise 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. So I was told to me to read. Somebody told you to read that. You should also read my book if you're looking into that, which is a great place for me to segue. So I'm going to play my commercial for my book. For those of you around the world in the MP3 broadcast, you won't be able to see the visuals, but you will be able to hear the audio. So let's go ahead and pay the bills with the commercial for Leonard O'Neill's book, my book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide, online now.
Right, Joanne said you recognize them when you take off the rose-colored glasses, but then to do the healing, you have to put the glasses back on and see the soul. Correct. Right. So you have to take off those rose-colored glasses, proverbially, and see people for who they truly are, and let them show you who they truly are. But then to heal, you have to then, look into that as well, right? So then you have to learn to, but then you also have to heal properly. You have to also become objective with yourself, completely open and honest with yourself, and see things from other people's perspective, not how you think people see you, but how they actually see you, not how reality, how you think reality is, but how reality actually is. And 99% of the population sees reality through the lenses of those rose-colored glasses. They see the reality through the lenses of what they think reality is based on their experience, not based on the stark, honest idea or the stark, honest, objective reality itself, right? So it's difficult for us to stop listening to the ego and say, I might be completely wrong about reality. It may not be anything that I think that it is. And at some point, you will come to that realization during the dark night of the soul about yourself, and then eventually about other people, and eventually after that about reality of it in and of itself. And those are the different dark nights of the soul. So there's one that you have personally, then there's one that you have about society, then there's one that society has about itself. Do you see? So let's continue here, right? With the law of one.
I am Ra. The physical complex energy deficit is somewhat increased by continued distortions towards pain. The vital energy levels are as previously stated, having fluctuated slightly between askings. Question 90.2. Questioner, could you tell me the situation with respect to our fourth and fifth density companions at this time?
Right. So I'll read for the people that are listening on the MP3 broadcast. Cassie said, exactly, Leo, 100%. We all, in capital letters, we all are consistently learning as the creator. Absolutely. As the creator. Not from the creator, but as the creator. And that's a 4D thinking that you have to stop separating yourself. First thing that we teach, first thing I will teach you, and most people like me, is that if you want to remember who you are as their higher self and your past lives and even your future lives, and do that higher learning, you have to stop referring to yourself as, I am this person and I have a higher self. Or my higher self is her or him, depending on what sex you are. In that you have to start referring to yourself as, I am that person. I am the higher self. I am. And that this down here is an avatar, and the personality that I have developed for myself is a personality that only exists in this place, and that I am the experiencer that is above that, and I'm experiencing this as this avatar. I am not this avatar. I'm not this thinking mind body. I'm not the pain body. I'm not the thinking mind. I am not the ego. I am that which is immortal, which is above that. Once you start associating that with that, that's the beginning of the consciousness of I am an immortal soul. I am energy. I am light. And then once you get that concept down, the next concept is the realization that I am, in fact, the co-creator. I am the creator. And that this higher self is an avatar. And that I am actually the creator. So that's two levels of the understanding of first, I'm just alive and you're not self-aware. And then you have, I'm self-aware for the first time. I think, therefore I am. That's the first level. And then instead of being, I think, therefore I am in this third dimensional place, it's I am the higher self. And then the realization of I am the higher self. And that's 5D and above 6D thinking. Once you start to get onto that concept that I'm not just a co-creator, I am in fact the creator, fractured into this avatar down here, along with all of everyone else. We're all actually not just co-creators here in this place, but we are in fact the creator. And that's a very high level of thinking when you start doing that. Welcome, Peter. And welcome, Brooke's back. Welcome, Brooke. Peter's back. Peter's here. He said the most important thing in life is what Yahweh said. We are the way. We are life. and we are courage, right? Namaste. Yeah, and that is the teaching of Jesus, trying to explain everything that I'm talking about here, in that ascension, in that knowledge of infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinity itself of the Creator, is to know those things, right? And I wanted to mention, I'm going to turn my camera back on here. I wanted to mention something about people are on the internet now comparing Jesus to Yahweh. And they're saying Jesus is this and Yahweh is that. Jesus was created to control the people, and that's the narrative that I saw on the internet. I was going to answer it on Facebook the other day and decided not to answer it to them. Actually, I did answer it to them, but not in full detail, because people will tell you that, and they're wrong. Let me tell you why. The word Yahweh is a Sanskrit word. That word translated into Greek words is the word Jesus spelled differently. And the word Jesus that we currently use is the English translation of the Greek word for Yahweh. So it's not even a Romanized word. And so the contention is the Romans created that word. They spoke Latin. Okay? They would not have come up with the English word Jesus from the word Yahweh translated into Latin, which is what the Roman people spoke. And even if you come forward to Italian, because by now with the modern Italian language, they are mostly Catholics. They are mostly Roman Catholic. Hence the term Roman Catholic, Rome, Italy. Their language now currently uses the English vernacular Jesus. That word came from the Greek translation of the Sanskrit word being translated into modern English. It is not an invention by Romans. It is not an invention of a different person. It is actually the same people. Now, in case you think that I don't know what I'm talking about, I am a theologian. You can look that up. Google it. Even Google will tell you that. Look up the origin of the word Jesus, the origin of the word Yahweh. Okay? They are the same word. And what they do is they give you this comparison that is Jesus controlling, and then Yahweh loving and Yahweh loving. And none of the stuff that they put on the internet about Jesus controlling did Jesus ever do. Most of that was a different interpretation of Jesus, and that was not written by Romans. It was written by Hebrew people trying to say that the Romans invented Jesus altogether. Not even giving you the name origin either, okay? So when people say that, they're saying Jesus is an abomination because he's not real and Yahweh's actually real. Yahweh, Yahshua, is actually the actual word. Yahshua is the Sanskrit word. When Jesus was alive, his name was Yahshua. Okay? Yahshua, spelled with the Greek lettering, is similar to the word Joshua, Yahshua. That's where we get that word from. Okay? So when you do that and then translate it into modern English, Joshua becomes Jesus out of that word, or it becomes Joshua. Okay? So the word Yahweh, Yahshua, is a translation, and then it becomes translated into English as the word Jesus. So Jesus was not, none of those have anything to do with Romans. Okay? None of those have anything to do with any language the Roman people spoke. The Romans would not have invented the word Jesus if they were trying to control people. But that's what they say on the internet. And they actually don't know what they're talking about when they say that. Okay? So I just wanted to point that out, because people say, oh, the word Jesus comes from the wrong word. And they do the same thing with Yahweh and Yahshua. They're like, oh, the Yahweh was the evil one and Yahshua was the good one. No. One is Sanskrit and the other one is Aramaic or Yiddish. Okay. Yiddish is a dialect of Sanskrit. So is Aramaic, and so is Farsi, and so is Arabic. Those are all dialects of Sanskrit. Okay, so depending on where the translation goes, when you have the old ancient Bibles and the written down words of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the other books that were in the New Testament, when they were either written in Sanskrit, Yiddish is a little more modern, but one of those languages, and then translated either into Coptic or into Latin or into Greek. And from one of those languages, translated into a more modern language down to the language that I'm speaking now, that is English, where we get the word Jesus from. Okay. And the origin of the word Jesus doesn't go through Coptic, and it doesn't go through Latin or Italian, and it doesn't go through Russian or German or any other language. It goes through Greek and then into English. And so when you do that, the spelling changes the word pronunciation. And anyone who knows anything about language knows that. Okay. The Greek word for a lion is Leo, Leo. Leo. They invented the word that everyone uses because they conquered the planet. So the French word for Leo is Lion, the way they say it, Lion. To say that and to spell it with the non-eidetic alphabet, with the Futhark alphabet, because the Greeks used an eidetic alphabet, the French do not use an eidetic alphabet. The word Leo, pronounced the way the French say it, Lion, is spelled Lion, Lion. And when you take that word from French and say it in English and say the word wrong, when you say it with an English accent, it came out lion. We changed where the hyphen was in the words and the way they're spoken. But we spell lion, Lion, lion. Okay? That comes from the French word lion, which comes from the Greek word Leo, Leon. Do you see? Lost in translation. Jesus, Yahshua, Yahweh, Jesus comes from those words being translated over 2,000 years into modern English. Okay? So people say that Jesus was an invention by the Romans. The word in and of itself is a Greek word that has been translated into English, not even Italian. So it didn't go through Latin and it didn't go through Italian to English to end up Jesus. Okay. So the Latin people, the Roman people would not have created a character named Jesus. They would have called him a different name. That's where you get Yahweh as opposed to Yahshua. So Yahweh doesn't translate into Jesus from Latin. Jesus can only be translated from the Greek word and the Greek spelling, eidetically going into phonetically into Futhark lettering, which is where all of English, French, German, Norwegian, Danish, Dutch, all of those people, Spanish, they all use the Futhark alphabet from the Vikings. All of those people in Europe, Northern, Western, Southern, Eastern Europe, or not Eastern Europe, because they use the eidetic alphabet that comes from the Greeks when the Greeks owned it. Okay. So you guys need to learn your history and learn the history of religion and learn the evolution of a language before you start posting things on the internet saying that Jesus was in fact a Roman construct when the word itself comes from a Greek word. There's nothing Romanized about that word or concept at all. And why now we're going to have to get into conspiracy theories and go, that's the beauty of it. The Romans are blaming it on the Greeks. Not at all how it happened. Okay. So let's continue, okay? Let's continue with the law of one. But I wanted to clear that up, especially because it is Easter weekend around the world, and people are out there posting things about Jesus on the internet, and that's just a translation of a word into a different language, and that's the way it's spoken. It's just an evolution of the way people say things, and then the way they spell those things to represent what it is that they're saying with whatever accent that they're saying or because of a language.
Answer: I am Ra. The fourth density league of companions accompanies your group. The fifth density friend at this space-time nexus works within its own density
Sorry, I'm pausing again because Cassie asked a question I didn't see until it's here. So yeah, Yahweh, Cassie said, where did Yahweh come from then? Yahweh is the Greek word, is the Coptic word translated from Yahshua. It also is the I believe the Yiddish word. So once the language went from Sanskrit to Aramaic to Yiddish, then Yahshua became pronounced Yahweh. So that's where we get Yahweh from. Yahweh is just a more modern translation of the Sanskrit Yahshua. So Jesus, when he was born, if you watch the Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, you'll see that that the language that they're using is Sanskrit. I think it might be Aramaic, but they still call Jesus Yahshua, not Yahweh. So so from that other language, the dialect change, instead of saying Yahshua, they started pronouncing it Yahweh, because there was no SH sound. So it was a wh, Yahweh, instead of Yahshua with the SH sound with the W, Yahshua. It became a Yahweh sound. And so that's where that word came from. It still translates the same. So in Swahili, which is also, people don't know that. Swahili is also a derivative of Sanskrit. That word is very similar. And there's still some words that are similar in that language. Like when I was talking to Brooke, and she goes by Satori. And when I said, do you know the origin of that? And she said, it's Swahili. I said, it is actually Swahili, but Swahili is a dialect of Sanskrit, and it's Sanskrit, but they mean the same thing. And so she knew what it meant. But she had just known it from the Swahili, which is a direct link to Sanskrit and Aramaic. But it means the exact same thing, and it's spoken the same way. That's one of the words that are almost identical in the language. So I said it's actually older than that, because Swahili is not as old. Sanskrit is the root language that it comes out of the Middle East. And anybody who's a linguist will tell you that. I met a guy who was a linguist, and he said, they told me that because I'm learning different languages, like 28, by the way. And in talking to him, he's a linguist, and he's a historical linguist when it comes to the languages out of the Middle East. And he was the one that told me that and started telling me some of the similarities in the language, that Aramaic, Swahili, Sanskrit, Yiddish, Arabic, and the like. All those languages are just dialects of Sanskrit, the ancient language. And then the Mesopotamian language is also a derivative of that, but their writing with the cuneiform is also synonymous. But I don't want to get into the writing as much as the script, as much as the words and phrases and clauses. Oh, that's funny, right? So that's where that comes from, Cassie. So you have to look into that stuff when you see it. When people are saying that, they don't realize that, right? Peter said in the Passion of the Christ, he used Aramaic. Is that what it was? So it might be Aramaic that they were using in the Passion, and not Sanskrit. I was wondering that myself because I was thinking it was Aramaic, but I wasn't sure. So in Aramaic, then Yahshua could be pronounced either way, Yahweh or Yahshua, depending on, and Peter can attest to this, and anybody that knows anything about their own country, depending on whether you're in the north or the south or the east or the west. Because if you're in the east of Ireland and you're in the west of Ireland, the people in the west of Ireland, the people in the east of Ireland can't understand the people in the west of Ireland because their accent is so much thicker. And the people in the west of Ireland laugh at the people in the east of Ireland because they don't understand them. Same thing happens here in the United States when you're in the south as opposed to the north, and the east coast as opposed to the west coast. So when you have a diverse culture, that changes. So when Aramaic was in place, Aramaic was a dialect in the same country of Sanskrit. And so the word Yahshua and Yahweh were just the way they said that in the north and the south of that country at the time, Mesopotamia, which is hilarious when you think about it. So that happens naturally. If you don't have an educational system like we do today, and even with the educational system we do today, look at the people in Australia and the version of English they speak, the people in say, Canada and the version they speak, the people in the United States and the version they speak, and the people in Europe over in England and in other countries where they speak English, you'll see that there's a very big gap in the words are enough to where you can understand each other, but then you have specific country origin, north, south, east, west origin slang terms that are used that are culturally used that people out of the country won't understand. So we have them in America. Ireland has them there. England has them there. It's just the way that language is. And if the lack of education or an educational system teaching you a language or a religion or anything for that matter will get a slightly different interpretation just because of the way people are and the way they say things regionally in different places of the world, even speaking the same language. So that's how you get Jesus out of Yahweh, and it's not a construction by a country that never even said that word that way. To this date, they only started saying it that way once they converted to Christianity and people were saying Jesus, and then they were teaching people Jesus. So now the word is synonymous around the world, and is now the word Jesus is spoken by more people on this planet currently than all the total number of people in the past that referred to Jesus as Yahshua or Yahweh, because there was only about, maybe 35 million to 50 million people in the past that spoke those languages, that spoke that name the way that name was pronounced. And there's currently almost 3 billion people on this earth alive today that use the word Jesus.
Exclusively. Question 90.3. Questioner, by what means do these particular fourth density entities get from their origin to our position? Answer, I am Ra. The mechanism of calling has been previously explored. When a distortion which may be negatively connotated is effected, this calling occurs. In addition, the light of which we have spoken, emanating from attempts to be of service to others in a fairly clear and lucid sense, is another type of calling in that it represents that which requires balance by temptation. Thirdly, there have been certain avenues into the mind, body, spirit complexes of this group which have been made available by your fifth density friend. Question 90.4. Questioner, actually, the question that I intended was how do they get here? By what means of moving do they get here? Answer, I am Ra. In the mechanism of the calling, the movement is as you would expect, that is, the entities are within your planetary influence and are, having come through the quarantine web, free to answer such calling. The temptations are offered by those negative entities of what you would call your inner planes. These, shall we say, dark angels have been impressed by the service to self path offered by those which have come through quarantine from days of old, and these entities, much like your angelic presences of the positive nature, are ready to move in thought within the inner planes of this planetary influence, working from time-space to space-time. The mechanism of the fifth density entity is from density to density and is magical in nature. The fourth density, of itself, is not capable of building the highway into the energy web. However, it is capable of using that which has been left intact. These entities are, again, the Orion entities of fourth density. Question 90.5. Questioner, you stated previously that fifth density entities bear a resemblance to those of us in third density on planet Earth, but fourth density does not. Could you describe the fourth density entities and tell me why they do not resemble us? Answer, I am Ra. The description must be baited under the law of confusion. The cause for a variety of so-called physical vehicles is the remaining variety of heritages from second density physical vehicular forms. The process of what you call physical evolution continues to hold sway into fourth density. Only when the ways of wisdom have begun to refine the power of what you may loosely call thought is the form of the physical complex manifestation more nearly under the direction of the consciousness. Question 90.6.
Right. So think about what he says there, right? The description must be baited under the law of confusion, right? Batted under the law of confusion, right? The cause for the variety of the so-called physical vehicle in the remaining variety of the heritages from the second density physical vernacular form, the process of what you call physical evaluation continues to hold sway into the fourth density. Only when the ways of wisdom have begun, so we'll get into that, we'll unpack that, to refine the power of what you may loosely call thoughts, is the form of the physical complex manifestation, more nearly under the direction of the consciousness. Okay, so let's unpack that paragraph right there. All right. Because you're moving from the physical into the non-physical plane when you're in the evolution of, let me pull myself down now for full screen again here, and then we'll put it back up on the screen as well so I'll read it again. So here you're in the physical plane, the third dimensional plane. I think, therefore I am. As you start to ascend, either in service to self or in service to others, you start moving from the physical into the non-physical, faster if you're in service to others than in service to self. However, you start then grasping the concept of the other self, which is the non-physical avatar, but the spiritual soul self or spirit self in a spirit body, which is an energy light body, not a physical third dimensional plane body. So as you grasp that concept and start moving yourself from I think, therefore I am this person, I am this body, I am the thinking mind, I am the ego, I am this pain body. When you start to fathom the concept or grasp the concept of, wait, I'm something else, I'm the experiencer, I'm the everlasting soul that resides in a different place than inside this physical body. Once you start to do that, that's the beginning of you moving into the astral body, moving into the realization of the energy light body and not the physical plane, physical body. So as you start to move into that place, that's the next transition from I was not self-aware and then I was self-aware. I think, therefore I am. The next major transition is becoming self-aware of the self as the spirit body. Once you do that, then you start to realize that the thinking process that you have is a process of this avatar here, because you start to and this is why we tell you this and teach you this, that when you are meditating, you're moving into that place where the thinking mind cannot reach you and the ego cannot reach you, so you do not have thoughts. You can quiet the mind. When you get there and realize I still am, so the I think, therefore I am no longer applies because I'm not thinking, but I'm still here. Then what am I? What am I then? And how is it that I function here without the thinking? Then you disassociate yourself from the thinking and you realize I am not, in fact, the thinking. And that's what meditation does for you. And that's why we teach that. And then we teach you that what you're trying to accomplish in meditation is the realization and moving into that place and sustaining that place outside of the reach of the thinking mind and the ego at all times when you're conscious, not just in a meditative state. So first we introduce it to you in the meditative state and get you used to meditating and going to that place. And the more you go to that place, the easier it is for you to achieve. So at first it's really hard to get to that place. And then the more you do it, the easier it is and the faster you get to that place. And then when you get to there and you realize that's happening and it's happening fast, and then you start asking what's the next step, because you will, that's when we introduce to you that the concept is what you're supposed to be doing is trying to achieve that place instantly and be there all day, every single day. So when you first wake up, you're coming back into this matrix. So you hear the thinking mind and the ego, and it yells at you in the morning when you're first waking up is all the thoughts and all the fears and all the anguish or all of the arrogance or whatever you do if you're associating yourself with the ego. All that's very loud. Okay, so quieting of the mind is the first step in that. So when people like, I can't go to sleep without a television on, or I have to have sound on, or I have to have that will go away when you learn to quiet the mind when you're awake. Because then you can learn to do that when I'm trying to go to sleep, and you'll see that you don't need those tools in your ears to blind that out. You can just shut it off because you move into that place. So the first thing you do is quiet the mind in the meditation, get used to doing that and realizing you still are. Then get used to doing it without having to sit down and meditate for an hour or 2 hours at a time. You can instantly pull yourself into that place and hold yourself into that place. That is the beginning of the pain body waning and going away, and the spirit body waxing, as to use that vernacular, getting stronger in your mind processes. So when that happens, you move into the fourth density. The physical pain body is less dense as you move into the fourth density, higher number density. Physicality starts to go away. Spirituality starts to become more solidified. So you become more solidified as light energy and less solidified because you're associating with light energy as your body, less with your physical body. So the physical body is actually less in the fourth density dense than this physical body currently is. And as you move up, it continues to progress that way. And then there's another ascension that you do when you start to merge with your higher self in that place, which is anchored at the halfway through the sixth density, which I'm not going to get involved in that right now. But so that's where the thought process, let me go back over here and read this to you. Let me put this back up in full screen and I'll read it to you again, right? That latter part of that, the process of what you call physical evolution continues to hold sway into the fourth density only when the ways of wisdom have begun, right? To refine the power of what you may loosely call thought is the form of physical complex manifestation more nearly under the direction of the consciousness. So again, as you're moving away from the physical plane, you start to realize I'm not the thinking mind. So therefore, wisdom is now dawning on you. More wisdom is becoming more refined. So the power of what you usually call thought is the form of the physical complex manifestation more nearly under the direction of consciousness. So now your thought processes is no longer part of the physical body, the physical manifestation of this brain tissue inside your skull, but you realize that you're above that and you're still capable of a thought. It's just not happening in the physical anymore. It's happening as a conceptual thing. So the entire concept gets created by you instantaneously instead of all of the words that make up the concept in the physical plane. So then you start realizing that last part, that the thought is the form of the physical complex more nearly under the direction of the consciousness. So the thought is only manifest in the physical body, but it comes from the consciousness. So this is, if you've ever heard me talk about that, then you've heard me say that when the next step in your evolution or your ascension is when you start realizing and paying attention, because you will, when you get there, you'll be able to sense it, that just prior to the thinking of a concept, say, I'm thinking the sentence that I'm going to say to you, that concept happens before the words come out of my mouth. It happens before the thought processes are telling my words what to say in what language. There's an entire concept that comes into play of what I want to say to you. That's me thinking it. That's the spiritual body. That's the consciousness coming up with the whole entire concept. And then this physical pain body takes that thought, the entire concept, and takes it apart and puts it into words to how to articulate that through this sound vibrational form that we call language. So the wisdom of what's happening only occurs to you as you move up into associate yourself with the spirit body. And as you start doing that, you then realize I'm not the pain body. I am not the thinking mind. I am not the ego. So what am I? I am the immortal soul who is the co-creator, who is the witnesser, the experiencer, and I'm alive. There's the new I think, therefore I am moment. I am still alive. I didn't cease to exist when I stopped thinking, because there's another form of thinking, and it's not a physical thought form that's working in this avatar. It's a light body form of thinking, light language. Okay, concept, thought, manifestation, thought, not verbiage, not language, not earth-based words to articulate, but an entire concept all at once to articulate. Okay, and that's exactly what Ra's saying here. So let me read it one more time, and then we'll move on. If you guys have any questions, please ask them in the chat, and I will address those before we move on. Okay, so let me read the entire paragraph again. Okay, the description must be baited in under the law of confusion, the cause of for variety of so-called physical vehicles in the remaining variety of heritages from the second density physical vehicular forms, talking about the body and the pain body and the thinking mind. The process of what you call, the process of what you call physical evolution continues to hold sway into the fourth density only when the ways of wisdom, this is now the conceptual ideology of you occupying the space and saying, I am the spirit body, I am the higher self, I am the immortal soul. So that only when the ways of wisdom have begun to refine the power of what you may loosely call thought. Okay, so now because I think therefore I am no longer applies. It is I am the higher self now applies, and I'm still alive when there's no thinking going on. So what am I? What is? Well, then that's when you realize that's the wisdom coming into play, telling you that what you may loosely call thought is the form of the physical complex manifestation more nearly under the direction of consciousness. So that's when you start to realize that it is your consciousness that is the directing force, the catalyst to the thought processes of the pain body. Okay, let's continue.
Questioner, if the population of this planet presently looks similar to fifth density entities, I was wondering why this is. If I understand you correctly, the process of evolution would normally be that of third density resembling that from which evolved in second density and refining it in fourth and then again in fifth density, becoming what the population of this looks like in the third density. It seems to me that this planet is ahead of itself by the way that its mind, body, spirit complex or body complex looks. What is the reason for this? Answer, I am Ra. Your query is based upon a misconception. Do you wish us to comment or do you wish to re-question? Question 90.7. Questioner, please comment on my misconception if that is possible. Answer, I am Ra. In fifth density, the manifestation of the physical complex is more and more under the control of the conscious mind complex. Therefore, the fifth density entity may dissolve one manifestation and create another. Consequently, the choice of a fifth density entity or complex of entities wishing to communicate with your peoples will be to resemble your people's physical complex, chemical, yellow array vehicles.
Okay, so again, because you're moving into the non-physical body and the concept of not traveling physically because you're outside of time now. So time is only the distance that it takes the physical body to go from one place to another. You're no longer in the physical body. You're in the fifth density. So now we're above 4. We're into 5, where the physical body is now mostly light. So therefore, you do not have to physically go from one place to another because now you're into the conceptual light energy thinking of being able to go instantly astral traveling from one place to another without having to physically move. So therefore, if you're going to communicate with somebody in the third dimension, the third density, you would project yourself into a physical body and manifest that for the people of the third dimension so that they would be comfortable and see you as a physical body and they could actually touch you and you could interact with them. Because now you have the ability to create, co-create, and like Ross said there, to change something, right? So let me read again, right? To create right? Consequently, the choice of fifth density entity, the complex of entities wishing to communicate with your people, meaning third dimensional people, would be to resemble your people's physical complex chemical yellow ray vehicle. So they would manifest into that form, and you would think that they are an alien from another planet or not, and just somebody that is supposed to be here. And then you would actually have a conversation with them, and they may never know that you came from a higher plane unless you allowed them in some way to perceive you differently than they would be perceiving people in their plane of existence. For whatever reason, if you didn't want them to know, you would just manifest yourself as someone that looks exactly like somebody that would be normally walking around in their existence, and then just have a conversation with them, and they would never even know that you were there. Or you're trying to help them to extend or expand their consciousness, in which case you would then manifest in a way that they would see you as angelic, or see you as, say, an angel with wings, or see you as an alien with a different color skin, taller perhaps, 12 feet tall, 14 feet tall, 10 feet tall, as opposed to 5 feet, 5'4", or different colored eyes, a different colored skin in some way that would still be pleasing shape to them, but also foreign enough to where they would see you. At that point, if you don't say that you're not a god, they may perceive you as a god at that point. And so depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to help them with in their learning, you would then address them as whatever you were trying to do to help them or whatever, right? So you have to realize that there becomes responsibility at that point. But if you're in service to others, you'll be more responsible with whether or not you said that you were a god or not. And if you were in service to self, you would probably want them to believe that you are in fact a god, so that you could use them to do things, whatever, get whatever you want from them, as opposed to teaching them and then allowing them to have the concept of a higher being, and not a higher being that is in fact their creator or something like that. So again, the conversation and the vernacular used by an entity coming from the fifth density in service to self or in service to others is going to be just as telling, and in the way that they address people in the third dimension and how they allow the third dimensional beings to perceive them is also going to be telling for anyone who has the knowledge to see, to be able to discern by listening to the verbiage of how they're addressing you and what they're telling you or who they're telling you that they are, will be self-serving or serving to the all. They'll either try to be a deity figure, a god, or somebody that you must worship, or they will be telling you that or hiding from you and not even telling you that they are something that is a higher being. Let's continue.
Question 90.8. Questioner, I see. Very roughly, if you were to move a third density entity from some other planet to this planet, what percentage of all of those within the knowledge of Ra would look enough like entities of Earth so that they would go unnoticed in a crowd? Answer, I am Ra. Perhaps 5%. Question 90.9. Questioner, then there is an extreme variation in the form of the physical vehicle in third density in the universe. I assume that this is also true of fourth density. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is so. We remind you that it is a great theoretical distance between demanding that the creatures of an infinite creation be unnoticeably similar to oneself and observing those signs which may be called human, which denote the third density characteristics of self-consciousness, the grouping into pairs, societal groups, and races, and the further characteristic means of using self-consciousness to refine and search for the meaning of the milieu. Question 90.10. Questioner, within Ra's knowledge of the third density physical forms, what percentage would be similar enough to this planet's physical forms that we would assume the entities to be human even though they were a bit different? This would have to be very rough because of my definitions being very rough. Answer, I am Ra. This percentage is still small, perhaps 13 to 15% due to the capabilities of various second density life forms to carry out each necessary function for third density work. Thusly, to be observed would be behavior indicating self-consciousness and purposeful interaction with the sentient ambience about the entity, rather than those characteristics which familiarly connote to your peoples the humanity of your third density form. Question 9.
Right, see, so there is a little bit more of an explanation as to the up and down of that second density, third, fourth, fifth, and the similarities or differences depending on the consciousness and the level of the consciousness of the being itself in regards to communication with higher or lower dimensional forms and intellects. Correct? Do you see?
90.11. Questioner. Now in this line of questioning I am trying to link to the creations of various logoi and their original use of a system of archetypes in their creation, and I apologize for a lack of efficiency in doing this, but I find this somewhat difficult. For this particular logos in the beginning, prior to its creation of the first density, did the archetypical system which it had chosen include the forms that would evolve in third density, or was this related to the archetypical concept at all? Answer: I am Ra. The choice of form is prior to the formation of the archetypical mind. As the logos creates its plan for evolution, then the chosen form is invested. Question 90.
Right. So it begins with the thought form, right? The choice of the form is prior to the formation of the archetypical mind. As the logos creates its plan for evolution, then the chosen form is invested. So the plan comes first. The concept, again, this is exactly what I was talking about a second ago. The concept comes into play, and this comes into play right there when I was talking about the concept of you moving into fourth and fifth density and the realization of who you are in that respect. It's also it's so as below, so above, as within, so without. You still have the same concept from the creation in and of itself. The concept comes before. You don't put the cart before the horse. The concept comes before the creation, and then the form is chosen based on the concept for the creation. Do you see? And that's what Ra is talking about there. But it's the same concept of thought form, manifestation of the physical. So we have the thought form of the astral plane is the concept, and then the physical plane, pain body, then chooses the form based on what was going on with the concept, and that tells the story of it in third dimension. So thought does the same thing as the creation itself does the physicality. There is no difference. There is nothing between those, because the thought, the manifestation of the spirit, is the same as creating reality in third dimension. There is no difference as you move outside of the physicality. You then move into the light body. You then move into the co-creator or the creator itself, becoming one with the creator itself, closer to the creator. So you become more like the creator. So therefore, your manifestation has a greater impact on the lower realms, because you are becoming the creator as you get closer and closer to the creator and go back to be one with the creator. Does that make sense?
Point 12. Questioner. Was there a reason for choosing the forms that have evolved on this planet, and, if so, what was it? Answer: I am Ra. We are not entirely sure why our logos and
Yes, in some very real sense, Cassie said. So in the fifth dimension, the fifth density, it really is, in capital letters, I think, therefore I am. Yes, in a very real sense, because you create the concept and then it manifests down here. So as the fifth density being and pulling yourself to that, that's actually very astute that you use that phrasing or that vernacular for the description, because that's exactly it. So as you realize you're the higher self or the immortal soul, then you realize that your entire concept of what's going on, it then becomes translated or manifest into, say, verbiage if you're talking, but also into reality. Okay. So because you're moving outside of time, you're now starting to move into reality outside of non-reality, because this place is non-reality. You just think it's reality because its job is to make you think that it's reality, when reality is in fact that place. So the thinking of, the I think, therefore I am becomes, the concept of I am becomes I think. So it would have been more accurate to, instead of saying the fifth density is I think, therefore I am, it actually is the opposite, because you're now up there, not down here. So it becomes I am, therefore I think. Right. But the concept that you have of that is accurate, right? Because now you're becoming, I think, in the spiritual sense, therefore I am. But what's happening down here is that it's I am, therefore I think is what it is. So you're the catalyst, and this becomes the outcome. So once you remove that and you flip that from down here, it's I think, therefore I am, that you are the outcome. Once you flip that to the outcome is what you want, not who you are, because now you're the light body, then the truism would be the opposite, that it is I am, therefore I think. Do you see? So it becomes backwards, but you're right in because then from the first person up there, it is I think, therefore I am. But in what's happening down here, it is I am, therefore I think, because you are up there, and down here the pain body thinks. So the manifestation, I am, therefore I manifest. I create, therefore creation happens. So that's where the difference is when it becomes as above, so below. Right. So there is a duality to that. As above, so below. As below, so above. There is the duality, and the duality is consciousness. So the consciousness becomes the heart chakra. Okay. And that would be the center point in your body down here. The consciousness, you become the love. So you're no longer the thing, I think, therefore I am, or the physical body, but you are the creator. I am the love. So then that's where it flips, because now you're moving into the spiritual, and that's the upper. So then it is I am, therefore I think, instead of I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think. I don't know if that's explaining it properly, but you're right. But the proper, from that perspective, from this perspective down here, the fifth dimension is I think, therefore I am. But from the perspective from the fifth dimension, it's I am, therefore I think, coming down here instead of going up there. So that's where it flips over, with your perception of where you reside and who you are or what you are determines your reality once again. So if I am equating myself with I am the spirit, the soul, then you're coming from the fifth density, and therefore everything is manifesting down here from you up there. But down here, we're trying to manifest everything from me down here to me down here. And you have to realize that your manifestation doesn't come from you down here. This is where you receive it. It comes from you up there and manifests down here. And that's why people say, as above, so below. But that's not what the Creator says. So that's not what Jesus tells us in the Bible that God said. So in Matthew 18, it is what you sow on earth, I shall too sow in heaven. What you do down there, I will manifest here. What you reap on earth, I shall too reap in heaven. What you do down there, I will give you up here. And that is because you're supposed to find yourself in your way up there. And when you do that, you realize that you are the creator, that all of us are. And so therefore, you are now manifesting the opposite way around. Fiona said, I rewatched the video because I'm of some garden of grounding for my mom. Thank you, Leo, and all around. Right? Yeah. So, right. Yeah. Have a great night. Have a great day, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. Right. Okay. So let's continue here. So yeah, the concept flips over on itself when you associate yourself with the higher self. Instead of I think, therefore I am, it's I am, therefore I think. Because that's where the manifestation goes from up there down to here.
And several neighboring logos with approximately the same space-time of flowering chose the bipedal, erect form of the second density apes to invest. It has been our supposition, which...
Okay, hold on, because now I went past the question, right? Let me back up, and we'll get back to that again.
Questioner, was there a reason for choosing the forms that have evolved on this planet, and, if so, what was it? Answer, I am Ra. We are not entirely sure why our Logos and several neighboring Logos of approximately the same space-time of flowering chose the bipedal, erect form of the second density apes to invest. It has been our supposition, which we share with you as long as you are aware that this is mere opinion, that our Logos was interested in, shall we say, further intensifying the veiling process by offering to the third density form the near complete probability for the development of speech taking complete precedence over concept communication or telepathy. We also have the supposition that the so-called opposable thumb was looked upon as an excellent means of intensifying the veiling process, so that rather than rediscovering the powers of the mind, the third density entity would, by the form of its physical manifestation, be drawn to the making, holding, and using of physical tools.
Right, so he's asking why we chose this human form, which makes up 24% of the known multiverse in a bipedal form and third density, 24%. So that's one of the highest percentages in third density of a single form. So we like the human form more than we like any other, or the bipedal form, not just humanoid, because there's other bipedal forms that are not Homo sapien sapien forms. Like, for instance, the Greys and the Draco, just to name two that you would be familiar with here on Earth. There's forms that are not bipedal, like dolphins and whales, that have a brain larger than we do. And we humans rate a being and their intelligence by the size of their brain, yet we won't acknowledge that dolphins have a brain that is slightly bigger than ours and that whales have a brain that is vastly bigger than ours. And we won't acknowledge that they are as intelligent, if not more intelligent than we are, yet we're arrogant enough to say that the size of our brain makes us the most intelligent thing on the face of the earth. And that having a large brain like ours is the sign of intelligence. And then somebody like me says, so then dolphins are at least as intelligent as us? And that's when the professor will go, you need to get out of my class. Well, what about whales then? Because they have they don't have souls. And all of a sudden they become spiritual and religious. They don't have a soul. They're just animals, right? Then all of a sudden they're religious again, right? Before that, they were a secularist until they have to, their argument can only move into the spiritual. And then they're like, yeah, they don't have souls and we have a soul. So then all of a sudden there's a God now and there's a soul. And then when you go, so you think there's a God? Out of my classroom. And they won't go any further, because they don't want to say that, well, no, you're right, and us killing them for food is probably a bad idea. They don't want to get into that concept, into the weeds on that, okay? So we chose the physical form. Let me get back on path. We chose the physical body, pain body of the bipedal pain body, because in what Ra is saying, admittedly so, Ra saying that it's an opinion. They're saying that because it solidifies more of the veiling process, but that's not why we chose the human form. That's part of it, because it is more fun, but it's more fun. Choosing the bipedal form isn't just because of the using of the tools. However, that's part of it. The bipedal form, we like it, and this human form specifically, we like in the bipedal. The reason for that is because the diversity of it and the things that we can do with it. And so all the different things we can do with hair and transglottal and things like that. And so that we, colors, tattoos, piercings, all of those things that we do even just on this earth. But we do that in other ways with our different things of different styles that we can do. We enjoy this form because of the diversity of it. However, the human Homo sapien sapien version is very diverse and can adapt to a lot of things, far more than anyone else. And we have the ability to adapt quickly to environments and multitask in a way that other forms and other species can't. So we move faster, think faster, and adapt faster, and that's what we're about here. Everything that we do on this planet is to speed up that and enhance that process even more. So when people say the humanoids were created because they're the dumbest thing on the face of the universe, that's actually completely the opposite, and they're trying to tell you that you're the dumbest thing. The truth is that we can make split decisions. Women can make up to 11 different thought processes. They can pay attention to 11 things at once. Men can do between 7 and 9 different tasks at the exact same time, and we can make split decisions on everything happening on all of those at the same time over and over and over and over and over, and continue doing that until we wear out our brain from thinking that quickly. And the more that we think, the more that we do that, the longer we can make those decisions quicker and quicker and quicker. That's why all of our game shows are based on how fast you can think and come up with the answer. So it's actually encouraging people to think faster and to be able to make decisions faster. All of our sports are that way. Auto racing, boat racing, air racing, anything where we're racing is based on the ability to make split decisions very quickly to not die. And then when you look at sporting events, it's the same. We're now using our minds to, like, say, throw a football or a baseball. We're using geometry in a way that we have to make a split decision and decide what a baseball is coming at us to try and figure out the spin of a baseball and swing at the right time in the right place to hit a baseball. That's not an easy event to do. Basketball, shooting, everything that we do is based on angles, everything in physics that have to do with distance, and the amount of force used, angles, geometry, and we're doing that while we're running, while we're skating at full speed, while we're doing that, and we're able to hit a target that's moving, like throwing a football and being able to get it over the defense and right to the guy, and he catches it and he runs and makes everybody misses him. Those are all split decisions that have to be worked on over and over and over to become really good at it as a professional in all the sports that we do. So when people say humans are really stupid, the truth is we can do that, and we do that from the time we're born until the time we die, and we do it faster than many other species could ever imagine doing in the universe. But we're down here being told that we're stupid and we don't know what we're doing. Shelley said, it's your, okay, well, I guess you should probably look at what everybody's saying, right? Cassie said, if you think about the most aliens generally look like they don't need to have mouths or thumbs, right? So, right, because they don't need them to make the decisions that we make. So it's the opposable thumb and the mouth that allows us to speed up our concepts and even our communication skills in a way. But telepathy, right? Cassie goes on to say telepathy and moving things with the mind, you wouldn't need those things. Correct. So if you have that ability, you don't need the physical body to do things. So you don't need coordination and you don't need that skill, because you can just use your mind to do that. And it's not very many people in the physical plane that have that ability anywhere in the universe. It's not unheard of, but it's very small populations, because the physical is physicality. Therefore, to be king of the physical, you have to be able to make decisions and have your body do things very quickly. So in the physical plane, the humanoid form and the bipedal form is the most optimum to be a force to be reckoned with. So in this physical place, you would want to be a humanoid, or at least a bipedal third dimensional being, to have a hand up on all other beings. So we are also a physical being. So you look at the Greys, they're shorter, they're thinner, they don't have a muscle structure, and because they reside mostly in space. Therefore, on an even playing field, we would destroy them in every sport. We would destroy them in a physical combat situation. So they can't come up against us in the physical. They would have to get us into the astral. They would have to get us into space, where we would be a little bit more lumbersome than they would be in moving around in space. Do you see? But on a planet, we have muscles. So even if the planet is denser, or the sun or the gravitational pull is denser, we will develop muscle to be able to do that. It'll take them longer because they have less of that structure, where it would take us less because we're already physical in this place. So if we go to a place that has less dense gravitational pull, we are stronger, and less and denser gravitational pull, we're weaker, but we have the ability to get stronger so we can adapt to it, just like we can adapt to a higher elevation where there's less oxygen, and our bodies can adapt to that, and we can use the less oxygen more efficiently and be just as good. And then if you're playing like a sport, you're used to being up at that high altitude, then you come down to a sea level game and you're going to be going longer because of the rich oxygen. And the guys that are used to that sea level are going to wear out faster. So you have advantages when you practice. That's why the militaries of the world have our troops practice in different environments, so that they're in the cold, they're in the hot, they're into all these places, so they get used to that. So if somebody's going to go to Africa, they're going to put them in a place that is simulated as Africa and acclimate them to that environment, then send them there. We do the same thing for space. Do you see? Because we adapt very quickly. Go down underneath water, we adapt to the pressure of water very fast. It takes us longer to decompress to the atmosphere outside of water or a less dense pressure than it does the other way around. We have to incubate and come up very slowly, or we can get the bends, where that means all the oxygen molecules in our body explode because we don't have enough pressure holding our body together. But if we go down in depth, unless it goes instantly to a large pressure, we go down deeper and deeper and deeper, our body pressure expands to hold us together without imploding. But the other way around, it's harder for us to dissipate. So there are advantages and disadvantages, but we adapt in a way that other forms of life don't adapt in the universe. It's just no one down here knows that because they're not from a different place. Right. So then Shelley said, I will, or more earlier in my life, not understand the words of sometimes think that I spoke, but I did not. I'm not exactly sure what you were saying there, because it seems to be a little jumbled. I don't know if you're talking to your phone or not. So maybe you could clarify that, but I think I get the concept of what you were saying. And it, yeah. So if you're talking about, say, a light language or something like that, then yeah, most people don't even understand light language when they speak it down here, because it doesn't translate as well as it should. But it does for some of us. We can catch the concept and interpret light language for you if we actually understand that light language. And that gets bizarre when we do that. I had someone call me one time and say, I have a message for you that came from up on high, and I think it was from the council, and it's in light language, so I have no idea what it means, but they said you would understand it, and let me know, and I'll say it to you. And so she called me, and I said, go ahead, and she started talking, and I actually understood everything that she was saying to me. And she said, does that mean anything to you? And I said, yeah. You want me to repeat it back to you? I can. It's not a secret. It's just something that they were urgent and wanted to get to me. So they tapped you because you understand light language and you could speak the light language. And so you called me, and this is what they said. And she was like, are you serious? You understood everything I said? I said, every word. Yeah. And she was like, so you speak that language? I'm like, not down here, but I understand it. I'm not really good at speaking it, but I understand it. I think it. That's one of the languages that is spoken at the council. So I think it when I'm not here. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm thinking with. But this pain body doesn't interpret that. It interprets it into this language. And so she was like, what? I was like, I know it sounds crazy to you, but you understand that it's light language. And she's like, yeah. And I said, okay, then just trust that the message was received and I understand it. So she was tripping on it. It was funny.
Question 90.13. Questioner, I will guess that the system of archetypes then was devised to further extend these particular principles. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. The phrasing is faulty. However, it is correct that the images of the archetypical mind are the children of the third density physical manifestations of form of the logos which has created the particular evolutionary opportunity. Question 90.14. Questioner, now, as I understand it, the archetypes are the biases of a very fundamental nature that, under free will, generate the experiences of each entity. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. The archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. Please recall the definition of the archetypical mind as the repository of those refinements to the cosmic oral mind made by this particular logos and peculiar only to this logos. Thus it may be seen as one of the roots of mind, not the deepest but certainly the most informative in some ways. The other root of mind to be recalled is the tracial or planetary mind, which also informs the conceptualizations of each entity to some degree.
See, so there again, the interpretation being localized concepts, like I was talking about earlier, being concepts of language and verbiage in the way that you say, pronounce, and spell certain words or concepts, becomes influenced by locality. Okay, so to put more into perspective, the concepts and the languages and the beliefs of this planet echo the beliefs of a different planet with a slight variation in concept because of the locality of the localization of the people here. For example, the Viking religion of Odin, Freyr, Freya, Thor being the Christ in that religion, being the Jesus character in that religion. Look at the Mesopotamian religion, and you have the dynamic from Tiamat, her husband, and the children, and then the Marduk. Marduk was the savior character, the Jesus character in that religion. Jesus, the Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, is the Christ character in the Christian, Hebrew Christian religion. Moses is the Christ character or savior character in the Hebrew religion. They're all the same character. Muhammad is the Christ character, the savior character in the Muslim religion. They're all the same person. They're all the same person, told differently regionally to the people of those places and the cultures that are there. But the concept is the same. And if you've ever read Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero of a Thousand Faces, which is like 1,000 pages long, then you will get this concept. It was more of a theological ideology than not, though he didn't sell it as that. And I've never read the entire thing. I've just heard him talk about it. I watched his videos when I was a kid, growing up until I was about 19 or 20. I don't know if I've watched any since then. Now I have. Every now and then I go back and watch some of them. I used to watch it on the local channel, the PBS broadcasting, which is a public broadcasting system. When I was a kid, they were interviewing him before he died and asking questions about all of that and that book. And so I watched countless, I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of hours of that stuff. I used to watch all the time from him talking before he died. And like I was saying before, regionally, same words being said differently, spelled slightly different, but the concept being the same. Lion, Leo, lion, lion. Those words mean the same object, but they're spoken differently depending on where you are in the world, even in the English cultures who speak English, not to mention all other languages. Okay? So depending on the influence of the culture will be determined the word that is used in the vernacular that means the concept. The same is being said here by Ra of this logos that is this, that is Sol, and this solar system. Okay? It echoes the larger narrative. So the concept is the same concept. How that is told is individual to this solar system, but it's echoes. So somebody that comes from outside of the solar system, being educated enough, they could come down to Earth, say, in this time, and they would hear the Christ story and realize that's a story that they have from where they came from, but it's told different down here. Semantical differences. This is why when I talk about being a theologian, the religions of the planet, most theologians are comparative religions, and what they're trying to do is figure out which religion is the oldest religion, and they're ignoring what all the religions have in common, and that's the actual concept of the religion, of the spirituality that they're trying to teach you. They just throw that aside. They're going, there's an older scroll, and these are just borrowed from something else. There's got to be an older one, and an older one, and an older one, and an older one. We got to find that. Well, what is the one that you're trying to find? What is what you're trying to find? Well, the oldest scroll. About what? Oh, about the origin of the universe and what's going on here. What is the origin of the universe and what's going on here? because most theologians, 98% of them, ignore that. And they don't even talk about that concept. They don't do a comparative in the religions and go, here's what they all have in common. They're all telling you the same story. They all knew the same thing. They go, well, it seems like they all knew the same thing, so we got to find out the oldest one. And they ignore what that same thing is. What is the concept? Why is no one teaching the concept that they're all telling you the same concept, and ignore the fact that they may have copied each other's paper? The fact that they copied each other's paper suggests they all agree that that concept is the right one. None of them were worried about who said it first. Ego says, I have to be the first. I have to be the right one. Ego says that. Non-ego says, this is the way. This is the way. And how do I know it's the way? Because everybody said it was the way. Well, what if one person, that's ego. What if one person decided that and they made up the way? That's what they try to tell you, because they don't want you to believe that that is the way. Don't look over here. These are not the droids you're looking for. You do not need to see their identification. They can go about their business. Move along. Move along. Okay? That's what they're trying to do, is distract you from the content of the concept and have you get caught in semantical, for one, and go to war over that. Go to war over how you worship the same creator. Whether you can say the name, whether you can draw a picture, whether you can even follow, or whether you believe that you are, all of that is semantical. How you do it, when you do it, cut your hair, don't cut your hair, get a tattoo, don't get a tattoo, jerk off, don't jerk off, get married, don't get married, have children, don't have children, eat pork, don't eat pork, eat beef, don't eat beef, eat chicken, don't eat chicken, eat meat, don't eat meat. That's more important. That's what they want you to believe. All of that's more important. Pick away and stick to it, but ignore the fact of the concept that they're telling you. Same thing can be told the higher up you go, or when you go from island to island to island, or if you go from planet to planet to planet, or solar system to solar system to solar system, or galaxy to galaxy to galaxy, or universe to universe to universe. There's an echo of the same exact knowledge. Semantically different depending on location. That's it. Culture, location. Okay. Cassie said, again, this resonates and it makes sense. Thank you. The message is more important than the messenger or the mode of messaging, right? So whose scroll is the oldest one? How old is that scroll? Is not as important as what the fucking scroll says, right? Absolutely. Celeste, welcome. Brooke, looks like Brooke is back. Welcome. Or she just happened to hit a button so that I knew she was here. So thank you for that. Okay. So here again, Ra is explaining that culturally, location-wise, will determine some things in the rules, but the message is all still the same. Knowledge and enlightenment, true enlightenment is universal. How much or how you get to that enlightenment is individual to not only the universe, it's individual to not only the galaxy, it's individual to not only the solar system, it's individual to not only the planet, it's individual to not only the planet, but the individual. How you get there. Getting there is the ultimate plan. Getting there is what you're supposed to be doing, and that's universal. The knowledge that you gain along the way is also universal. Okay? Cassie said, I was literally going to write that too. That's funny, right? Devil is in the details, Celeste. Yes, right? So the details is what you're supposed to look at, and they're not. They're ignoring the details. Chopping down the forest because they're trying to find the trees, right? Looking for an older scroll. We got to go and find the older scroll because there's going to be an older one that's going to tell something different. And then when they find an older scroll and they go, this is older than any of the other scrolls, it says the same thing. They throw it away and go, okay, so there must be an older one because they all copied from this one now. Let's look around until we find something new. And every time they do that, they're finding that it still says the same thing. And they're like, then there must be an older one. Let's keep looking. And I'm like, but what does the scroll say? Never mind that. We got to find the older one. What does the scroll say? I've been saying that my entire life. You're missing the point. The point is everyone keeps saying the same thing. Everyone keeps saying the same thing. The only thing that changes is the dynamic between God, goddess, son, or God, goddess, savior character, male, female, savior character being a male or a female. Or you just have a male and a savior. Or you just have a female and a savior. What is in common in all of those? Savior, 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 masculine, feminine. So there's a trinity there that is the same. Warlike cultures have a male figure that's in charge, and the female is subservient. Non-warlike cultures have either a dual aspect, male and female, equal, and a savior, could be male or female, or a dual aspect, single God, who is androgynous, male and female energies. Still masculine, feminine energies apparent in one guise or another. So warlike cultures eliminate the feminine. The feminine is always the aspect of nurturing, caring, loving. Get rid of that. Warlike culture. Masculine, warlike. One God, and so is the prophet. And so in a warlike culture is always a man because it's a warlike culture. Okay? Zeus, right? Zeus's son being the savior character. Odin, if you cut out the woman, because that's what they try to do now, and that Odin is in charge and the woman's kind of just there. But that's not the way it was to those people who lived in that culture at the time. It was a dual aspect, male, female. And then you have the Celts who had a female deity figure with a male figure that was subservient to her, and a female who was the savior character. Even the warlike ones can go that way, but normally male-dominated religions are warlike. Female-dominated religions are usually not. A dual aspect, if it's a true dual aspect, is equal, and otherwise it's not, and they pretend that it is. Zeus is ultimately in charge, and his wife and the other women are subservient to him, and he's the one God. Odin, they'll have you believe, was the same, but it wasn't that way by the culture. But they'll have you believe that now because now they're pushing warlike, and they have been pushing a warlike culture. Okay. So therefore, all the religions that are on this planet currently that are still there are a warlike culture because they're the ones that are still dominating because they're warlike. And they have been for thousands of years. That's why women are subservient in those cultures. They've driven out most of the feminine aspects, but that's starting to wax now. And so the masculine is starting to wane, and it's becoming more equal. That's where it's supposed to be anyways. Okay. So everything is culturally bound. Everything is bound to location. And you have to actually realize that part of it. And what is the message? Like Celeste was saying, the devil's in the details, right? So you have to see that and realize that is so the message is more important always than the way you say the message, because the message, the thought process is the manifestation. How you interpret that will be bound by your interpretation because of culturally where you are and what you know. So they changed the name of the gods and goddesses to fit the culture of the people, and then they tell the same story though. But then they go, well, we created it. We invented it because it's our God, see? And this one's the older one.
Question 90.15. Questioner, at what point in the evolutionary process does the archetypical mind first have effect upon the entity? Answer, I am Ra. At the point at which an entity, either by accident or design, reflects an archetype, the archetypical mind resonates. Thusly, random activation of the archetypical resonances begins almost immediately in third density experience. The disciplined use of this tool of evolution comes far later in this process. Question 90.16. Questioner, what was the ultimate objective of this logos in designing the archetypical mind as it did?
Right, before he answers that, I wanted to point out, Peter said one thing we don't do anymore is paint our doors with blood on Passover day to protect ourselves from the evil ones, right? Well, that comes from the creeping death from one of the plagues of Moses. One of the plagues of God was the creeping death. And because God said that Ramses II, who was the pharaoh at the time, would out of his mouth would be the next plague. So Moses told him what God said, and he said, "Your God is nothing and useless to me, Moses," and whatever. And then he said, after Moses left, he said, "Out of my mouth is going to be that. Let's show him. I want everybody to go out, and I want the firstborn of all Egyptians to be slain." And then that word was sent to Moses that the Pharaoh has decreed that the firstborn of the Hebrews, male of the Hebrews, will be slain. And Moses then got upset and said, "No, out of his own mouth will be the next plague. He has sealed his own fate. It is not the Hebrews that have to be worried. It is the Romans that have to be worried, or the Egyptians that have to be worried, that the firstborn Egyptian sons are going to die." And then God told Moses, "Paint on the archway of the doors with the lamb's blood and tell everybody to go inside during Passover, and I will pass over the houses." And that's how it became Passover. When you go into the houses, stay in there, and I will pass by the door. But any door that has the lamb's blood painted on the archway, I will not kill anyone in that home, but everybody has to stay inside or they can be harmed. So they went inside and they stayed inside and ate unleavened bread and grain and barley, and stayed inside and closed the windows and doors and didn't look outside. Even though they were hearing death outside, they didn't listen. They told their kids, "Don't listen, come away from the door and sit down," and everybody just pray to God and eat your food. And that became Passover. And so Passover was a holiday where everybody would remember that time, because it was after that Moses gained the freedom of the people, because that was the breaking point for Ramses II. And he said, "Take your people and get out of here." And then he got mad again because his wife called him a wussy for not killing Moses. And then he ran after Moses, and that was, how that went, parting the Red Sea and everybody dying, all of them anyways, and the Hebrews getting away. So nowadays, Peter, you're right. We don't anymore paint our door with the lamb's blood to protect ourselves from the creeping death or from the evil people. We no longer have to do that. That was 5,000 years ago, 5,400 years ago, when that event took place with Moses. So there's a big difference in our evolution. So now we don't have to do it that way anymore. So you're absolutely correct. However, we are in Passover currently, and it is coinciding with Easter. And today is Good Friday, unless you're on the other side of the prime meridian. If you're in Australia, it is in fact Saturday. If you're in India, it is in fact Saturday. And so for the majority of the planet, it's already Saturday. It is just the Western cultures from the UK and slightly east of the UK. So this half of the world hasn't gotten past Friday yet, but you guys are getting there. You guys in England are already into Saturday now, because you're 8 hours ahead of me. So you guys are already past midnight. So it's just now this side over here, the North American continent, that it hasn't done that yet. Okay, so wait, Cassie said, then you're always protected. No, but you have to protect yourself, right? Oh, you're talking to Shelly, because she said my door is, oddly enough, painted blood red. Yeah, that's funny, right? Cassie said, or who the message comes from, like you said, Leo, different messengers, but the same message. Yeah. So when you have to realize that, symbolic, right? Shelly said symbolic. So you have to realize that and this is what Celeste was saying about the messenger, right? So the message, not the messenger, but you have to remember who the message came from, but you have to remember what is the message that they're telling you, because the message is more important than who is telling it to you. Although it's always good to listen to who is telling it to you as well. When I was in philosophy, Philosophy 101, the beginner philosophy in college, the concept is that to truly understand philosophy, you have to look at the philosopher, the messenger, not just the concept of what they're saying, but you have to look at the philosopher, the messenger itself, himself, herself, and say, when did this person live? Where did this person live? And what motivated this person to say what they did? Was it geopolitics at the time that led to that motivation of what they're saying to truly understand the concept of what they're saying. So learning that in teaching that to people, you have them look at all aspects of something. Did it mean something specifically to the people at the time that it was written, in the culture it was written, or was it written by that person to transcend that? And does the message apply to everyone in the world? And does it still apply today because of translation? Like, for instance, when Jesus was with Mary Magdalene back then, almost 2,000 years ago now, the people then referred to Jesus and Mary as Mary was Jesus's companion. Companion now means buddy, friend, pal. 2,000 years later, companion then meant spouse. Okay. Also, Jesus could not have been called the title rabbi, nor could he have taught in the synagogue, in the temple at all, unless he was in fact married. It was part of the religion. He had to be married by 31. Jesus was 33 when he died. So for 2 years of his life, or at least for a year of his life, he was able to teach. He would have been able to teach because he would have been old enough, but he had to have been married. So he could have taught as a rabbi, couldn't teach as a rabbi unless he was married. So even if he was under the age of 31, 18, 17, 20, 25, to be called rabbi and to teach in the synagogue, it had to have been known and proven that Jesus had a spouse. People just try to hide behind that and say that's not true. Look at the Hebrew religion at the time. It's part of the religion. So Jesus had to have been married because it's written that he was called rabbi. So he had to have a wife. Who was it? Okay. Who was his wife then? If not Mary Magdalene, who was his wife? Since the wording that they used in Aramaic at the time was Jesus had a companion who was a female. 2,000 years ago, that word meant wife, spouse. Okay. That you can look up. It's not something that I've made up. It's not something that anyone has made up. It's true to the language and the religion of the time. Okay. So that means Jesus had to have been married, and he was married to somebody. The only woman that he was palling around with was Mary Magdalene. And of all the women that were in the party, because there was more than people think, because when you look at the party, it's all in the way the religion is scheduled now or structured now, it's all men, the 12 apostles. Look that up. You'll find there were 17 women that were there, 7 that were with Jesus all the time. He didn't have a harem. But when you read of him recruiting the women, there was only one that he referred to in any other way. And referred to in a specific way that he didn't refer to anyone else out of all the apostles. And that was Mary Magdalene. When Jesus went to Mary, she did not recognize him. And she was still, quote unquote, possessed. And she was going by Lilith at the time. And she thought Jesus was a suitor trying to bed her when he walked up. He walked up in a bar and he stopped her from drinking the alcohol and said, "No, this is not for you." She was like, "Leave me alone." And she got up and she left. He followed her outside. Read this. It's in the Bible. Watch it in the TV series, The Chosen. He goes outside and he says, "Mary of Magdalene." She stops and she turns and looks at him. He says, "I call you by your true name." And she said, "Who are you that calls me by your true name?" And he said, "None other than your creator, the Lord, thy God, would call you by your true name." And then he went up to her and he said, "I call you now by your true name because you are mine." He didn't say that to anyone else. Why would Jesus say that to Mary Magdalene if she was just a pal, a buddy? He didn't say it to Peter. He didn't say it to Matthew. He didn't say it to Mark. He didn't say it to Luke. He didn't say it to John. He didn't say it to Zed. He didn't say it to anybody. Peter the Zealot. He didn't say it to anybody. Didn't say it to Thomas. Didn't say it to William. Didn't say it to Job. Didn't say it to Jude. Didn't say it to anybody. But Mary of Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, he said, "You are mine," to her. And then she collapsed in his arms and hugged him. Oh, wait a minute. He didn't hug anybody else either until one day when he hugged Matthew to make him feel better, and one day when he hugged Peter, and then Peter hugged Matthew when they were trying to keep the peace. So think about those things and look them up. Don't believe anything that I say to you. Go down that rabbit hole of your own volition and look those concepts up and find out what was going on 2,000 years ago. Don't apply your concepts of reality today and your concepts of reality as a person to the reality of what went on 2,000 years ago. Go and look at what the reality was in that place at that time for those people and what laws they had to abide by, and read those. And then you'll find out the truth about what was going on. And, I don't know, Brooke, if you're saying anything because this is like the third time I don't know if you're just letting me know you're here, because there's no words in there. So I don't know if you're not actually saying anything and you're just popping up. I'm hoping that you're doing that on purpose and that you're just popping up. I love you, by the way. That's Brooke right there that just popped into the crowd. That is my soon-to-be spouse that I love dearly. And so I wanted to say hi to her and acknowledge her, because earlier I just said hi and that was it. But I'm missing her because I'm on here talking to you guys and not able to talk to her at the moment before she goes to work. So I love you, baby. I just wanted to say that. Okay, so let's continue with the law of one. Let me put this back up into full screen and we will continue with the law of one.
Answer, I am Ra. Each logos desires to create a more eloquent expression of experience of the creator by the creator. The archetypical mind is intended to heighten this ability to express the creator in patterns more like the fanned peacock's tail, each facet of the creator vivid, upright, and shining with articulated beauty.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry, Cassie said that was actually me, not Celeste. So sorry, I wasn't going to go back and look at it. All right, so next part 2 of session
Question 90.17. Questioner, is Ra familiar with the archetypical mind of some other logos that is not the same as the one we experience?
So I thought it was, I knew it was one of you guys, and I was taking a guess that it was Celeste that said that. So I apologize, Cassie. She's the one that had made the comment of the devil's in the details. I think that's what she's referring to, because I had quoted that was Celeste that said that, and Cassie's like, no, that was me actually, not her. And thank you, Brooke. So I popped that up on the screen. She's just saying that I love you, my Kelto. I love you, my Satori. All right, let's continue.
Answer, I am Ra. There are entities of Ra which have served as far wanderers to those of another logos. The experience has been one which staggers the intellectual and intuitive capacities, for each logos sets up an experiment enough at variance from all others that the subtleties of the archetypical mind of another logos are most murky to the resonating mind, body, and spirit complexes of this logos. Question 90.18. Questioner, there seems to have been created by this logos, to me anyway, a large percentage of entities whose distortion was towards warfare. There have been the Moldek and Mars experiences and now Earth. It seems that Venus was the exception to what we could almost call the rule of warfare. Is this correct, and was this envisioned and planned into the construction of the archetypical mind, possibly not with respect to warfare as we have experienced it, but as to the extreme action of polarization and consciousness? Answer, I am Ra. It is correct that the logos designed its experiment to attempt to achieve the greatest possible opportunities for polarization in third density. It is incorrect that warfare of the type specific to your experiences was planned by the logos. This form of expression of hostility is an interesting result which is apparently concomitant with the tool-making ability. The choice of the logos to use the life form with the grasping thumb is the decision to which this type of warfare may be traced. Question 90.19. Questioner, then did our logos hope to see generated a positive and negative harvest from each density up to the 6th, starting with the 3rd, as being the most efficient form of generating experience known to it at the time of its construction of this system of evolution? Answer, I am Ra. Yes. Question 90.20. Questioner, then built into the basis for the archetypes is possibly the mechanism for creating the polarization and consciousness for service to others and service to self. Is this, in fact, true? Answer, I am Ra. Yes. you will notice the many inborn biases which hint to the possibility of one path's being more efficient than the other. This was the design of the logos. Question 90.21. Questioner, then what you are saying is that once the path is recognized, either the positive or the negative polarized entity can find hints along his path as to the efficiency of that path. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. That which you say is correct upon its own merits, but is not a repetition of our statement. Our suggestion was that within the experiential nexus of each entity within its second density environment and within the roots of mind there were placed biases indicating to the watchful eye the more efficient of the two paths. Let us say, for want of a more precise adjective, that this logos has a bias towards kindness. Question 90.22. Questioner, then you say that the more efficient of the two paths was suggested in a subliminal way to second density to be the service to others path. Am I correct? Answer, I am Ra. We did not state which was the more efficient path. However, you are correct in your assumption, as you are aware from having examined each path in some detail in previous querying. Question 90.23. Questioner, could this be the reason for the greater positive harvest? I suspect that it isn't, but would there be logos that have greater negative percentage harvests because of this type of biasing? Answer, I am Ra. No. There have been logos with greater percentages of negative harvests. However, the biasing mechanisms cannot change the requirements for achieving harvestability either in the positive or in the negative sense. They are logos which have offered a neutral background against which to polarize. This logos chose not to do so, but instead to allow more of the love and light of the infinite creator to be both inwardly and outwardly visible and available to the sensations and conceptualizations of mind, body, spirit complexes undergoing its care in experimenting. Question 90.24. Questioner, were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or plans set up by the logos other than those we have discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities? Answer, I am Ra.
See, this concept is still, this is why I'm kind of letting it play, just so you guys know, and if you've been paying attention, then you know what I'm what I'm getting at here. This concept is what I was explaining, that regionally, area-wise, you're going to have more details localized. And so this is kind of what Dawn is asking Ra, and that's why he'll go on to explain that, and that's why I'm not stopping right here to really get into the details, because I've already got into the weeds on this early on when I was explaining the concept of, and it's the same if you look at this entire session is conceptualized by the parables of verbiage, thought processes, then moving into physicality or non-physicality with the physical plane and the non-physical plane, moving into the spiritual plane. All of those concepts are all the same, just different examples of those. And then I went into the details of, regional in the country, to regional on a planet, to dialects on a planet, to solar system. And I expanded out from that. And now Dawn's asking the same question. And you're going to see the answers from Ra are going to be basically the same. That, yes to the answer. What are the differences? Were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or planes set up by the logos other than those that we have discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities? Yes, because the concept translates on every level to localized ideology, to the localized logos of the particular planet, solar system, or beyond that to a galaxy or a universe.
Yes. Question 90.25. Questioner, what were these? Answer, I am Ra. One more, that is, the permeability of the densities so that there may be communication from density to density and from plane to plane or subdensity to subdensity. Question 90.26. Questioner, Then as I see the plan for the evolution by this logos, it was planned to create as vivid an experience as possible, but also one which was somewhat informed with respect to the infinite creator and able to accelerate the progress as a function of will because of the permeability of densities. Have I covered accurately the general plan of this logos with respect to its evolution? Answer: I am Ra. Accepting the actions of the unmanifested self and the actions of self with other self, you have been reasonably thorough. Question 90.27. Questioner: then, is the major mechanism forming the ways and very essence of the experience that we presently experience here the archetypical mind and the archetypes? Answer: I am Ra. These resources are a part of that which you refer to. Question 90.28. Questioner: what I am really asking is what percentage of a part, roughly, are these responsible for? Answer: I am Ra. We ask once again that you consider that the archetypical mind is a part of the deep mind. There are several portions to this mind. The mind may serve as a resource. To call the archetypical mind the foundation of experience is to oversimplify the activities of the mind, body, spirit complex. To work with your query as to percentages is, therefore, enough misleading in any form of direct answer that we would ask that you re-question. Question 90.29. Questioner: that's okay, I don't think that was too good a question anyway. When Ra initially planned for helping the Egyptians with their evolution, what was the primary concept, and also secondary and tertiary, if you can name those, that Ra wished to impart to the Egyptians? In other words, what was Ra's training plan or schedule for making the Egyptians aware of what was necessary for their evolution? Answer: I am Ra. We came to your peoples to enunciate the law of one. We wished to impress upon those who wished to learn of unity that in unity all paradoxes are resolved, all that is broken is healed, all that is forgotten is brought to light. We had no teaching plan, as you have called it, in that our intention when we walked among your peoples was to manifest that which was requested by those learned teachers to which we had come. We are aware that this particular line of querying, that is, the nature and architecture of the archetypical mind, has caused the questioner to attempt, to its own mind unsuccessfully, to determine the relative importance of these concepts. We cannot learn teach for any, nor would we take this opportunity from the questioner. However, we shall comment. The adept has already worked much, not only within the red, orange, yellow, and green energy centers, but also in the opening of blue and indigo. Up through this point, the archetypes function as the great base or plinth of a builded structure or statue, keeping the mind complex viable, level, and available as a resource whenever it may be evoked. There is a point at which the adept takes up its work. This is the point at which a clear and
Yeah, there are other people here, Cassie. She says, anybody else here? I'm just chatting away. No, there are other people here, but I guess they're just not talking in the chat, right? Or they're not in a chat where I can see them because I'm only seeing your conversation that you're having. So that's funny, right? But thank you for that, Cassie, by the way. She said, we appreciate you, brother, and thank you for explaining it in your way. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do is interpret it, but that's hilarious, right? I sometimes think that too, because I see numbers and nobody says anything. And I wonder if people have questions and they're just afraid to ask, or if they don't have any questions and they're just listening to me answering. Sometimes I wonder about that. But I figure when people are ready to ask questions, they will ask questions, or have a comment, they will have a comment. And if they don't, they don't, you know what I mean? Okay. So let's continue here. So literally, let me back this up just a little bit. So the concept of the learned, right, is, we cannot learn, teach for any, nor would we take this opportunity from the questioner. However, we shall comment. The adept is already worked much, not only within the red, orange, yellow, and green energy centers, but also in the opening of the blue and the indigo. Up through this point in the archetypes function as the great basis or plinth. I'm not sure exactly what that word is. I didn't look that up, of a building structure or a statue, keeping the mind complex viable, level, and available as a resource whenever it may be invoked.
conscious consideration of the archetypical mind is useful. Question 90.30.
Oh, and then I didn't finish the next sentence to catch you up to there. I apologize for that, right? Invoke, there is a point at which the adept takes up the work. This is the point at which a clear and concise consideration of the archetypical mind is useful. Next question, session 90, question 30, questioner. I have observed the archetypes number 1 made by
0. Questioner, I have an observation on archetype number 1 made by name, and I request comment on it by Ra. I will read it. The matrix of the mind is the conscious mind and is sustained by the power of the spirit as symbolized by the star which flows to it through the subconscious mind. It contains the will which is signified by the scepter of power in the magician's hand. All of creation is made through the power of the will directed by the conscious mind of the magician, and the bird in the cage represents the illusion in which the self seems trapped. The magician represents minus all the radiance of being manifested as the creation through which each entity moves. Answer, I am Ra. As this instrument is becoming somewhat weary, we shall not begin this considerable discussion. We would request that this series of observations be repeated at the outset of the next working. We would suggest that each concept be discussed separately or, if appropriate, a pair of concepts be related one to the other within the concept complex. This is slow work but shall make the eventual building of the concept complexes more smoothly accomplished. Were we to have answered the observations as read by you at this space-time, as much space-time would have been given to the untangling of various concepts as to the building up of what were very thoughtful perceptions. May we ask if there are any brief queries at this time? Question 90.31. Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Answer, I am Ra. It is well that the appliances for the arms were placed upon the instrument. We ask that continued vigilance be accorded these distortions which are, if anything, more distorted towards disease than at our previous cautionary statement. All is well, my friends, you are conscientious and faithful in your alignments. We appreciate your fastidiousness. I am Ra. I leave you now, rejoicing merrily in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, so let me pull this up over there and we'll end it there. But yeah, back to the tarot. Always returning to that in the later versions or later sessions, returning back to that because the tarot was put together. Cassie said that. She said, I see always back to the tarot because the tarot was put together to teach these archetypes. And using the archetypes for divination was done because of being the learned adept at balancing the archetypes would then be able to understand that. So the tarot deck was introduced to the population by Ra through Egypt back, 6,000-7,000 years ago, actually 12,000 years ago, if you actually get technical, 12,000 years ago. And then that has evolved into the playing cards that we have and all of the tarot decks that we have. And all of that was to interject the knowledge of the ascension by the archetypes. So the archetypes that are there, the major arcana and minor arcana are the chakras. Major chakras, 7, minor chakras. So that's why there's 22. The original deck was 22 cards, or like some say 21, but there's also the 0 card. That's the 22nd card. So the original decks were 22 cards. That's the second ascended master number, 11, 22, 33. So that's the middle ascended master number, which would be the synonymous with the heart chakra. And the balancing of the upper and lower chakras, the major and minor arcanas, right? And so that was a concept for the people of Egypt, and for the same concept of the chakra centers for the people of the East. Do you see? And in the same concept of the spindle wheel, which is what they called it in the Greek religion, and the wheel within a wheel that the Hebrews talked about, the tree of life, which the Asians and the Vikings talked about. Vikings call it Yggdrasil, and they had the different worlds, and each of the worlds coincides on the tree of life to a chakra. Okay, So the different worlds, Jotunheim, Utenheim, the different worlds are different chakras with different personalities and different arcana. Same arcana as the 7 major chakras. Okay. That's the concept that I'm showing you in the next book that I'm writing that won't be out for probably a couple of years now, probably be in about 2 years before that comes out. Maybe a little bit longer. It'll be at least 2 years. It might be 2.5 years before that comes out. But I'm showing that correlation in there where most people are not, even theologians are not seeing that concept of everything that's going on. So I'm drawing that in there to that. And before we go, you can see that I have my shirt on, right? The reality about reality, returning to the old way. The old ways, I'm going to quickly do a commercial again for that, and then I'll be right back, and then we'll wrap the show up. So,
what is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide online now.
So you have to realize that the message is the important thing, not who wrote it, not when it was written. The message itself, the concept of the message is the same, and it echoes through all religions on this earth. It's just told slightly different depending on the dynamic of the religion itself in the region of the world, whether it's a male-dominated, female-dominated, dual aspect religion, whatever the archetype is, that religion changes the narrative of the deity figures and what role those deity figures play. But they're still always the God, creator of the universe, and the savior down here on earth. That is all the same in every religion. And it's just a matter of what things transpired during that process of the sacrifice and the resurrection, which is the Joseph Campbell referred to as the hero's journey that each one of us do. So we emulate as below, so above. We emulate, or as above, so below. We emulate that same journey, the hero's journey, where we sacrifice ourselves for the greater good, and we go on this journey to become that hero, to sacrifice, that self-sacrifice, and that happens to every single being who's in service to others. Even those who are in service to self come across that same dynamic. So Joseph Campbell wrote the book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and that was dealing with that archetype that is the hero's journey, that is the savior character that is within each one of us, and that we go through that same dynamic. So in some very real sense, we go through something in our lives that is akin to an echo of Jesus dying on the cross, Moses being cast out into the desert, and then returning and fighting for his people to be freed. Jesus was fighting for his people to be freed. You have the same archetype. Odin, who had Thor, was upset with Thor because he was too arrogant, and he cast him down to earth and made him mortal. Sound familiar? Jesus came down to earth. The difference being an aggressive, warlike society. Father is upset with him because he's too warlike, and he sends him to earth and strips him of his immortal abilities until he proves himself worthy to become a god again. Jesus comes down and sacrifices himself. Different culture, different religion, different aspect, same storyline. Jesus comes down in human form. Moses was born in human form, and then he had to sacrifice himself and his life to then defeat the evil. And then there was the balancing of the chakras, the plagues of Egypt, and he had to balance the Hebrew people behind God's will and do the right thing, balancing of the chakras. Okay, you see that playing out in Thoth the Atlantean, where they talk about that as well. In the Egyptian religion, where you have to pay the boatman, you have to know the name of the god who is in charge of the gate the 7 gates. To get to heaven, you need to know the true name of that God and the riddle, and be able to solve the riddle of that. That means balancing that chakra and knowing how to do that. Otherwise, you can't get into the afterlife. The same thing told in a different way for the people there because of the concept of the people. Marduk had to go through the same thing, and there were 7 creatures that he had to defeat, different creatures that were created by Tiamat, that he had to overcome to defeat Tiamat. Tiamat was what? The devil. Tiamat was what? The evil, the availing, and he had to illuminate himself and defeat the 7 archetypes of beasts that she would create that nobody else could defeat. That's the same concept of going down the boat and knowing the names of the gods, or balancing the chakras, or further later on when Jesus was talking about the letters to the churches, and that if you don't do these things from that church, then I am God, and I'm detested by you, and you won't get to go to heaven. And so the letters to the churches are those chakras, and this is what you need to do and how you need to live to have God's grace, and that's balancing the chakra. All of those things are the same. And Thor went through the same. There were 7 tests for Thor, and he had to overcome all of those to prove his worthiness to pick up Mjolnir again, which means lightning, right? By the way. And his name was Thunder and Lightning, the god of thunder. He was the illuminated one. He was to use Mjolnir, his warhammer, to crack the sky with lightning, with illumination, and scare off Fenrir the wolf. Fenrir the wolf was the veiling to lighten, to illuminate the sky. Jesus ascended to become the light of the world. Moses became the light of the world for the Hebrews and led them out of darkness into the light, out of Egypt and their bondage into the light and their freedom. Same thing. So these concepts are the same. And the hero's journey for each individual, you go through the 7 archetypes, the 7 major arcana archetypes, test that you have to go through in your everyday life. You're doing those things, and you will succeed in your hero's journey of enlightenment by going the same path when it calls to you. When you're ready for that, it will call to you. And that is the concept that Joseph Campbell wrote in that book, the Hero with 1,000 Faces, that every single one of us goes through that exact same event, that the gods, the savior sent by the creator to save us, were showing us, and we're supposed to go through that same path. Jesus said the way to heaven is through me. Didn't mean like going through his physical body, but it meant by his way in emulating what Jesus did, and that's how you get to heaven. So all of those people, even Muhammad, said the same thing. Muhammad was quoting Moses. Remember what Moses said and what Moses was doing, and Moses went through that same thing and had to prove himself to the Hebrews and prove himself to be worthy of something as a Jew. And when he realized that he was living a lie and thought that he was an Egyptian, he was in fact a Jew. And then he needed to know what that meant. So he then had the dark night of the soul, where he went down and worked in the pits with them as a slave, and then was turned in and cast out, and then met God and illuminated himself by God, and was baptized by fire, like Jesus was baptized by John. He was baptized by fire, and then he could see God and he could hear God. And then God said, go and free my people, but I don't know what to say. I will tell you what to say. And the same thing with Jesus, had to do the same thing with Moses, the same thing with Thor. All of them had the same journey and the same things to overcome, the same things about themselves to find their own courage. And if you look at The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy was going through the exact same thing, and she had to find courage, love, and she had to find wisdom. She had to go through the same chakras and balance those. And that's why the whole entire concept. And then eventually everything is within yourself. She goes to the Wizard of Oz, who was the green color, by the way, green color, the heart chakra. Go there, and when I need a brain, says one character. I need courage. I need a heart. I need different those things. And even what she needed, she wanted to go home. She needed to find her confidence to be able to do that. All of those are the same 7 arcana that they had to go through, the dynamic between good and evil, the light and darkness, the evil witch and the good witch, One was dark, one was light, one was evil, one was good. The conscience on your right shoulder, the devil on the left shoulder, both vying for your attention. And you have to define yourself, find your own courage, your own wisdom, your own love, your own consciousness, and then realize I can go home anytime that I want. I just have to manifest that and go home. So even the concept of that movie, Wizard of Oz, was the same hero's journey that they had to go on. And the one thing that was consistent in there was that Toto was not afraid of anything. Toto being the conscience or the id that was Dorothy. And all of those concepts came together. And then you see at the end of the movie, when she comes back to reality, that all of the people that were in her journey were friends and family members of hers. But she didn't realize those concepts, but then she did. And she was like, you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And they were like, you were just dreaming. You hit your head and you were just dreaming. And so the doubt is there that it was just a dream the entire time. But was it? Was it just a dream, or was it her going through this dark night of the soul because of the fear of this engulfing tornado that might kill her, and that she was afraid of dying, and then eventually she wasn't, and then she learned about herself, and she gained confidence and love and wisdom and understanding and all of these things, and at the end she was better for it and had more confidence and had more knowledge and was awake. At the end she was awake. So it's the same concept that is the hero's journey that we all have to go through. And that's what Ra is talking about. And that's what all the religions of this earth are talking about. And that's what Joseph Campbell was talking about. And that's what Carl Jung was talking about with the dark night of the soul. And that's why I was using those examples in vernacular from that speech of Jung, of doing shadow work and the dark night of the soul, and then coming up, that is the descension into hell, and then coming out of hell and ascending back to heaven. That is the same thing. You personally go through the dark night of the soul. Our entire society has gone through and was going through the dark night of the soul during COVID and everything that entailed from that, and the evil people around the earth trying to lock down everybody and take complete control was the descension into hell. And then there was change in the world began out of that darkness. Rose people realigning against that darkness and resisting that darkness. No more COVID. We're not letting you have control of our children. We're not letting you have control of our governments. We're not letting you have control. We are in charge, and the people around the world are voting those people out of power that were trying to solidify their power and take control. And that has changed. Like almost 80 countries now have changed because of that, because of draconian ideology in 2020. And here we are in 2025, and major changes have happened, and they're still happening, and they're going to continue to happen because people have realigned against that ideology, and they're no longer allowing that to happen. People are standing up everywhere in the world, no matter what political party they happen to be a part of. Okay, guys, I love you guys, but yeah, look at those concepts. And Penny said, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this. I love you guys. I would suggest that. And then there's Rick. Rick just popped in. Hey, buddy, I'm about to end the show, and you're just able to pop in. Sorry about that, buddy, that you just got here. It is crazy, right? When you got to work over there, and now that the time changes happened for both of us, you guys are over there in Australia, trying to find, where how you can watch the show. And I've just talked about maybe adjusting things, but if I adjust for Australia more, then the people in Europe can't watch. And so I'm trying to find that even keel of the planet where I can do this. And once I move to Australia, because I will be doing that before the year is over, once I go there, I'll be having to get up at, in the morning and be live at like 8 in the morning to be live at 3 p.m. over here in the West Coast of the United States. But I'll do what I need to do to try and keep that concept an even keel. And for those of you around the earth, if you can't watch it, can't listen to it live or watch it live, it is out there for you to listen to and watch afterwards. Most of you who listen on the MP3 file, you don't usually ask me questions anyways. But again, if you guys want to reach me wherever you're listening to this at, if you can't send me a message from there, you can go to YouTube and send a message there, or Facebook and send a message there, or Messenger or Instagram and send a message there, or you can find me on any of the platforms under my name, Leonard O'Neill. You'll see me on most platforms where I post reels every day. You can message me either directly or in one of the reels there, or you can find my email address by going to, if you're listening on the MP3 broadcast, going to www.leonardoneill.com. orionrising.podbean, P-O-D, pod, B-E-A-N, bean.com. And that will take you to podbean.com where my show is, where it records, like right now where it's recording. And then it goes out to the rest of the world. That shows up on the whatever app that you're listening to me on, and you can message me there or get my email and send me an email to ask questions if you like. You can also go to my publisher and get a hold of me there for my book, and you can get a message to me through my publisher, or you can message me from there, find my email there and send me an email. But it's easier to get me on Messenger. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Snapchat. I don't know where else I'm on. So you can get a message to me if you have questions from around the world. And I'm not completely 100% fluent in most languages, but I will be able to translate. So if you don't speak English and you're getting this through a translator, you can message me in your language and I will translate that, because I am currently learning 28 languages. So I'm not fluent enough to have a full conversation, but I can go back and forth through email. And these days, it's going to be easier because now they have those earbuds that I can put in that is a universal translator. So I could actually have a conversation as long as you have one to be able to translate my English to your language until I get fully fluent in learning the languages of this planet. I hope to have those all learned enough to have full communication and conversation in almost every language in the next 4 or 5 years, probably prior to that, right? If things go well for me the way I expect them to, I pick up language pretty good. Okay, I love you guys. This has been Good Friday. Good Friday is almost over now on the planet. So we're moving closer to the resurrection, which will be Sunday. For some of you, that's just tomorrow, depending on where in the world you are. If you're in the Americas, it's still 2 days out. It's still on Sunday. That will be the resurrection of the Christ one more time. And in this timeline, currently, they have Jesus listed as being born in 5 BC, BCE for the secularists. That would suggest that the 2,000-year anniversary of Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection will be in the year 2028. So this day, 2028, will be the 2,000-year anniversary of the crucifixion, and then Easter Sunday in 2028 will be the currently, unless it changes again, will be the 2,000-year anniversary of the death and resurrection of Jesus, the Christ, Jesus from Nazareth. So that's only important to 3 billion humans on the planet. The rest of you may not see that as anything that's important, but know that whatever religion you are, you have a savior character that also had the same journey that more than likely happened at the same time of the year. And if it's not at the same time of the year, the concept is still the same of the death and the resurrection, the descension to hell and the ascension to heaven. Even Muhammad didn't have to be murdered the way Jesus was. Muhammad ascended to heaven before they were able to kill him, but he had the same descension into hell and then ascended to heaven. And so you still have the same journey. So the semantical things are the differences that are culturally or regionally different. And those expand out to every culture, to every region, from city-states to countries to a globe to a solar system to a galaxy to a universe and back to the creator. So the only things that are different in the message itself are the semantical individual names, places, dates, but the entire storyline is identical no matter where you go. Okay. I love you guys. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Happy Easter to anybody who celebrates that. I will be back on Wednesday to do the Zoom call, and then I'll be back here again next Friday to do the Law of One and to continue now that we're on session 90, 91, or I'm not exactly sure where we ended here, but I'll look at it here before I delete it so I know where we're at. And we will continue until we get all 106 sessions completed on the Law of One, and then we'll move into teaching something similar but different, but not the Law of One anymore. But we'll go into something else that will be spiritual, and it'll be exactly the same message, just coming from a different angle. All right, guys, I love you guys. Have a great weekend. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show.